You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 395, 1 year later, Mandalorian Season 2. That's a mouthful. We decided that, I think today's the 23rd, and the final episode of the Mandalorian Season 2 ended just a few days ago last year, and we thought, why don't we come back, talk about all the episodes, kind of see how they've sat with us over the last year, and maybe kind of touch on some things that we felt were good, bad, or indifferent about those episodes. So really high-level recap, and should be a lot of fun. It was a really good time rewatching this. I'll say that. It was like, poor me. I had to sit there and watch Mandalorian Season 2. So speaking of pity parties, no, I'm kidding. Hey, Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing all right, man. We're matching in red. I like this.
I saw that. Yeah. Well, it's Christmas time.
It is.
And
of course, I'm wearing Spider-Man. I don't think that counts. But
it doesn't really count. Yeah, fine.
That's
you're
right.
still a nerd. Today is the 5th anniversary of Rogue One. So felt that was appropriate that I don the Rogue One garb. But
I don't think I've seen you wear that shirt before.
No, I don't buy like new shirts at all. Like rarely do I buy new shirts.
Yeah, most of yours are about 20, 25 years old at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when we say they're vintage, they were actually vintage.
Vintage. Yeah, I go buy a lot of them on like eBay and Facebook and pay stupid prices for shirts. But I like the vintage shirts. I don't know. So this is somebody else's. I never bought this shirt, but anyways.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds about right. Okay, well, I don't know that we had any news. In fact, if we do, we're not going to talk about it because I didn't write anything down. So we can just jump into season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Well, you were saying as you kind of let us in there that this was like punishment to make you watch this all again.
Mm-hmm.
So what were your initial impressions after maybe as you started to watch the first episode and maybe then as you got towards the end of it all? Like, what were your just general impressions about where you were starting from and where you went? Is it still hitting the same, getting you all in the feels, or the same disappointments or letdowns? Like, what was your overall impression as a year later after all this stuff?
I really like The Mandalorian. Okay. I think it's a great TV series. I think it does a lot for the Mandalorians in general. Because outside of the Clone Wars, you don't really have much to connect with. You're outside of Boba Fett, which, we're getting a whole series of, but unless you were a Clone Wars fan, you didn't really have a lot to really kind of latch onto with the Mandalorians, unless you were part of the Legends group, right? And you read all the books and comics and that sort of thing. But watching the performances, there were so many highs and definitely way more highs than lows. Although I think the lows bothered me more this time, having sat with this for a full year. And we'll get into that. Like, there's some things now that I'm like, I probably was pretty cool about that, a year ago. And maybe I was just kind of caught up in all the hype. And now looking back, I'm like, I don't know if I really like that or not. So we'll talk about that too. I don't want to be too controversial, but there are some things that I felt like over the last course of the year didn't really age well for me personally.
Okay.
But overall, I mean, my goodness, what a great freaking show. And there was a level of suspension of disbelief that I think came with it that I was very conscious of as in rewatching these recently. Where, when you're doing this week to week and we're trying to break stuff down and talking about all the secrets and the Easter eggs and how it's all connected and all that, we kind of tend to look past a lot of that. And that's probably a good thing, right? I mean, that tells us we're in the moment. We're not really overthinking it. But now when you're doing this a year later and we're trying to talk about things we liked and didn't like, and, now some of that does tend to get exposed a little bit. And so it doesn't change anything for me. But if I was really being critical, I would probably be calling some of that stuff out like, that doesn't really add up, or that doesn't make any sense why that would happen. But what about you? What was your, experience in rewatching a lot of these?
Well, first of all, I have to make a response to what's going on in the chat. So first of all, if you're listening to this on the podcast, we do have a live stream going on, and we do try to post this in advance. So most people are joining through YouTube. And someone said this is the only red shirt I have, and that is not true. I have another red shirt that's also Spider-Man. Thank you very much.
Oh,
so I just had to clarify all of that. Like, Spider-Man's my favorite Marvel character. Anyway, I had I had a very similar overall response. I really, really had a lot of fun rewatching these episodes. Now, I didn't notice as many of the lows, but probably because I was skipping through them really fast. to get to the critical parts. So I skipped a lot of the, I wouldn't call it exposition, but it was a lot of the, maybe the slower moments or the down moments. But within all of that, though, there were still a lot of pieces in there where, the fan service type of things. And did that have the same type of uh, negative impact, or was it did it actually create more of a positive feeling? Those were the types of things I was curious to see how I felt about, as well as, of course, the spider episode. And actually, the one thing that really resonated with me, I remember when we were talking about season two, and maybe this is more with Bad Batch, but a little bit with this one, was the whole concept of filler episodes.
Yeah.
And as I kind of went back through this, I was like, really, none of these were really all that much of a filler episode. Maybe the spider episode, but even still, it was very much a lead in to get you to the next stage. So I don't know that it 100% qualifies in that respect. And I think that was one of the things I enjoyed about rewatching, is that it really was a bit of a fast rewatch. I mean, it's 8 episodes, and most of them are in this 35 to 42-minute range, and
Mm-hmm.
it really did move along at a pretty good pace. But overall, I forgot how much I enjoyed the show, especially the opening series, or the season opening, where you have this really cool music going on, and then of course then you get the theme music whenever things go south in the fight arena. And it
Yeah.
was just, you just kind of get that feeling. You're like, oh yeah, this is cool, this is fun. And that's, I think those are the parts that, not just what you see on screen, but the experience altogether, can really, really take you to a different level with Star Wars. And not very many franchises can really say that. I was watching Hawkeye this past week, and that Marvel music is one of those same things type of do. When you hear that Avengers music, or that lead in from
Mm-hmm.
Marvel, it has that same, like I'm getting that same kind of feeling I
Yeah.
always got with Star Wars and Mandalorian in particular. But overall, this was a really enjoyable rewatch. So I'm really excited to go, kind of episode by episode here. And hey, a real quick shout out to Mike Rondo, who decided to decline our invitation to.
We asked him. He said no.
Yeah, he was like, "No, I'm too good for this stuff. I did it all once before. I'm not doing it again." I'm like, "Hey, if it was good once, it's good again. That's how we do things these days." So,
Yeah.
but thanks, you jerk. But he's here to support us for 20 minutes, so it's great.
He is. He'll be out here in 20 minutes. But the cool thing is, to kind of slight him, we're actually going to steal his Mando Monday format, and we're going to do the good. We didn't tell him, but we're going to take the good, the bad, the ugly for every episode, just to kind of keep it focused, and so we're not sitting here for a 4-hour show talking about 8 episodes. So, Mike, thank you very much.
We'll definitely keep it to 3.5. We got.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it 3 now. But yeah, so that'll be the format tonight for the show. We'll go into each one of those. So before we go any further, also, we are going to do a Patreon show right after this. So if you'd like to stick around, we'll post a link in Discord. And I don't know if we can get it out on social media in time, but we will record that. The topic is going to be, it'll be the Book of Boba Fett, The Final Hype. And we were going to do that as kind of a standalone episode as part of the general releases. However, because we've not been able to get much footage from that, and there's a very good reason, we'll get into that in the Patreon show. There really wasn't a whole lot to talk about. So the episode will be primarily focused on me grilling Jonesy on questions about predictions and stuff like that. But it'll be fun. We'll talk about what we know from the 5 teaser trailers that have come out.
Right.
We'll talk about predictions about who's going to live, who's going to die, who's going to cameo, that kind of thing. And just make it a fun little show.
I don't know why I had all these pictures of like all these Omega theories coming back. like I'm traumatized from Bad Batch.
Yeah, I know. And we'll get into we've got like show and tell stuff. I think Jonesy's got like 70 comic books. He's going to go through every one of those. So
and a Christmas gift behind me. It's awesome.
But we got some stuff for show and tell. I actually got some stuff in, which I'm pretty excited to talk about. So anyway, that's all on the Patreon show right afterwards. Again, we'll post a link in Discord. And if anybody here doesn't have access to Discord, just throw it in the chat or something, and we can figure out a way to get it.
And if you're not, eargluemedia.com/Discord.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, we can always just plug it. That's cool.
Yeah, there's another way. I like that. You always solve problems, Jonesy.
I am a definite problem solver, man.
Yeah.
You know what we should solve right now is we should solve the episode going into it.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, as a quick recap, season 2 opened on October 30th of coronavirus year 2020, which I thought was really relevant too, because you think about where we were in that time, and just everybody had been like cabin fevered at that point up until then, and then we get this, and man, it was just, I was looking forward to this just for something positive, and boy, did we get that in all of 8 episodes that came out. It ended on December 18th, so we're about 5 days off from the 1-year anniversary of it with the rescue. It's a small little episode that had a cameo appearance by somebody kind of big.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's get into The first episode, yeah, chapter 9, the Marshal, and I'm going to pull up. I have all the artwork come up, the concept artwork pulled up.
Right.
I thought we'd go through that just kind of in the background. I'll cycle through it. We're not going to talk specifically to these pictures unless there's something that really jumps out at us. But I thought it'd be nice to have something up other than our faces on the screen at all times. And you can.
Right.
This is so weird. We're both wearing red. That was not planned.
Is it really creepy?
We need to get like a. No, it doesn't. We should put our EGM shirts on and do that one day.
I'm the only one that wears an EGM shirt these days.
Yeah, I know. I don't even know what
I'm the
EGM is.
I'm the only one with pride in the network.
Yeah, no pride here. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm pulling up my notes here. I am paying attention. I'm just pulling up my notes.
All right, so I've got a little quick 1 or 2 sentence recap for each episode in case anyone should have forgotten what these were about. But chapter 9 was the Marshal. Yeah. And in search of others like him, Mando heads to Tatooine and finds someone wearing Beskar who shouldn't be. He slays a little crate dragon and we're reunited with a great warrior. Or a great old friend. Sorry, an old friend. Okay, so I'm gonna throw it over to you. Give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the way I didn't really give you some context here, but Mike kind of took it a couple different ways. But the good meaning something that we thought really stood out. It can be a couple things too, because there were some really good things, multiple things that stood out per episode. The bad would be something that either didn't really resonate with you, or you didn't like, or could have done without. And then the ugly is supposed to be kind of like a literally face ugly, or something that happened, something that was ugly to watch or witness, or something along those lines. So give me yours for the first one.
Yeah, I really don't have any uglies for this episode. And I always hate going first, however, because then you complain that I've stolen all of your thunder for all the things, because I end up actually giving you my entire list without like setting you up. Right. So I apologize in advance. So some of the good things I liked about this episode. So one was Timothy Olyphant. I mean, Cobb Vanth, getting Cobb Vanth period was really, really cool and somewhat expected.
Mm-hmm.
But man, seeing it on screen and the actor they picked to play it was absolutely spot on, and the character of it was just really, really perfect. So I think it was a perfect casting call, and it really worked. Other things I really liked, I liked seeing the crate. You got it on the screen right here, and I liked seeing the crate dragon and the idea behind it.
Yeah,
and the thing that really caught me off guard with the crate dragon was the whole acid spewing thing. I mean, that was just brutal, and it was just so cool. And of course, then you switch to the next one, which was the next thing on my list here was the way that I liked that we went back to the Tuscans and we were communicating, and we got this a couple of times throughout the season. But I really liked that this whole sign language, and plus he can somehow emulate the the call of the Tuscans, and the idea of that. I thought that was really, really I thought that was really cool. Now, some of the bad parts about this, there are really a couple of things. One, this is the CGI inconsistency is prevalent right away in this episode, and it's largely the speeder bike. And we talked about it a year ago, and it's still just as relevant today, if not more, more obvious to me. And we know we're going to see this a couple of more times this season, or throughout the second season. But that was one of the things that was just bothersome. As good as the effects have been in this entire series, that was one of the shortcomings. It just seems like the shortcomings of what was it called? The Halo? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, that image, the technology they used to film these background sets and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever was going on with how they did the speeder, it still doesn't work. And it just doesn't quite look right. It doesn't look bad, but it just doesn't quite look right. And so that still rubs me a little bit wrong. And then I think the only other thing that I would put in the bad category is the, again, when Din goes into the crate dragon and comes out basically unscathed, although he's dripping with, presumably what we would consider acid. Of course, maybe we kind of justified it like, well, it doesn't become acid until it's actually jettisoned or mixed with bile or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was the first time we started to see the invincible Beskar armor, which made the person invincible within it, which became an issue throughout the rest of the season as well. But I mean, those are really pretty minor nitpicks. I mean, and the crate dragon on top of the mountain was just unexpected and awesome. He's just the crate dragon up there just spewing acid over everything, was just like, holy crap, this is brutal.
Yeah.
There were other good things, but those are some of my highlights. What about you?
So I think, you took everything. So let's go to the next episode. No, I'm kidding. I enjoyed, so for me, the good in this episode was definitely Cobb Vanth's hair product, because if you think about it, I'm kidding. No, but seriously, like someone needs to make a hair product. Like if it can stand up Oliphant's hair on the Tatooine sun or Vance's hair on Tatooine with that heat, I mean, that is like supreme product right there. But I thought he was, no, and all joking aside, I thought he was awesome. Like I really enjoyed his character more than I did the first time around, you know? And yeah, the armor looked a little funky on him and, you know, with the whole red neck thing and all that at first, but I kind of didn't even think about that until I was looking at some of the pictures.
I thought that was totally intentional too, and didn't look great. Yeah.
I love the fact that they picked this up off of the from a certain point of view, or sorry, not from a certain point, aftermath stories, right? We talked heavily about that when this came out. In fact, I think it was one of the things that we had predicted going into the season at some point, but that was all good stuff. But he was definitely the highlight for me, one of the highlights, if not the highlight. Like you, the Crate Dragon. I mean, just the overall feel of this story, like the way this episode kicks off. I mean, it really does a really good job of pulling you right back in, coming off of season 1. I wasn't excited about going back to Tatooine. I guess that was my only bad that I had, because I was like, crap, we're back at Tatooine again. And I know I've mentioned that it's a dead horse at this point, or a dead bantha, whatever you want to call it.
Hey, you didn't pin it on me this time, so that's great. I appreciate
that's true. That's very true. And you know, I'm starting to think, okay, now we're going back to Tatooine with Book of Boba Fett. Are we going to go back to Tatooine in season 3 of The Mandalorian? God, I hope not. But that was my really only bad. I'm with you on the CGI. The one part that really stuck out for me when you talk about the speeder bikes is when Cobb Vanth kind of pulls up alongside him in his. Yeah. That just looks odd. And I don't know if it's because of the CGI or they're not, they look too big for the speeder bikes, which is another problem. It's always a problem. Like Anakin was the only one that ever looked like really kick ass on that speeder bike in, was that episode 2?
Yep.
Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, it's always a weird look when those guys are riding those things. But I definitely kind of feel what you were saying there with the way it looked. And then just, you know, seeing the armor again, Boba Fett's armor, and thinking, oh my gosh, there's some kind of tie-in now. Officially, we've got that out of the way. And then the last thing is just the Crate Dragon. I loved everything about that Crate Dragon, even to the part where, you know, he went down into the belly of the monster, almost literally, and blew that thing up. And it was all very predictable, and it was all very, I mean, the music, the way it kind of crescendoed at the very end as he pops out.
But still, him coming out with all the electricity and everything, it was a great way to get to escape. So I gave that a ton of credit. Yeah, I mean, it was a bit predictable, but I thought that was great too. But yeah, just getting out, and that was the way that he did it was really cool. Hey, you flashed this with Gor Koresh.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Gomorians in the arena? Are they still a bit underwhelming, both in size and in like skill?
I don't know. It was just they look like they have paint on them, but I mean, it's again, I'm nitpicking.
It was still pretty weak. I like the sequence though. The overall sequence was really cool.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree.
You know,
and it had to be there. Like, and the other thing that got me thinking too is like when he's hanging upside down here and he walks away, we presume that he was eaten or killed or whatever. But what if he's not? Like, what if he does come back up? You know, in later down the seasons, or we see him as a disfigured character.
I'm not going to go down that path with you. He's lunch meat.
Okay, fine. I'm just trying to. No, So he was. I actually like this character too. I know it was John Leguizamo, right? That did his voice.
Yeah. John Leguizamo. So that's right.
Maybe we get him in some other series or something later, because he's a kind of a big name actor. Right? They could have thrown anybody in this suit, and they didn't. So
it's funny. Every time I think of him, I think of Spawn, the character he played in Spawn. Movie. That movie was so bad.
Well, the comic book is pretty decent.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. Hey,
Jesse's got a question for you. Sorry, what's the deal with the den on Boba Fett's helmet?
Yeah, shout out to my brother Jesse here. What's the den? That's where all of the criticism from Albert has been over the years. It just focuses on one part, and it dents his Beskar armor. Yep, true story.
You heard it here first.
That's right.
It's probably a story for another day, but
yeah. In short, Jesse, what we believe is him and Boba Fett and what was his name, Cad Bane, got into a draw and took a shot from the head. So, but again, a story for another day if we actually get it told. It's not.
But we may actually talk about that in the Patreon episode.
Oh, there you go, Jesse. It's only going to cost you a few bucks.
Okay, I'm ready to move on. You ready to move on?
Let's do it.
Let's get to chapter 10.
The Passenger.
Sorry, I was trying to pull up the artwork here. So The Passenger.
Everyone's favorite episode.
Not people that have arachnophobia, that's for sure.
Well, I think of any episode of the 16 episodes we've had of Mandalorian, without a doubt, this one probably comes at the bottom for pretty much everybody. Or
Yeah.
I mean, more consistently than anybody else. It's probably clearly the least favorite one. I know Ash was in here saying that she hates it. I know Stephanie hates this episode and she won't even talk about it.
So do people hate it though? Because do you think it's well?
It's
And
pre-
you guys feel free to chime in on the side there. Is it because of the spiders, or is it just because it's not a very interesting episode? I mean, and it could be both, honestly.
I think it's
But
all. I think it's all the spiders.
yeah,
I think it's
Mhm.
interesting enough. I like the idea. I mean, it's this idea of like a horror episode,
Mhm.
and I mean, what do you do when you have this swarm? What it reminded me, I mean, you and I kind of grew up with this stuff. It was like 80s horror type of movies, right? Like it reminded me of Gremlins of all things. You're
Hmm.
just completely consumed by all these gremlins and everything, and
Yeah,
it just doesn't seem like any
being
way out.
swarmed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, granted, this was much more like a, type of thing, but I don't know. But what I liked about it though was one, we got a little bit of a glimpse of Grogu interacting with the Force besides eating the fish babies, or the frog babies, but also a little bit of a Force kind of thing. I remember we speculated a lot about if that meant anything, and at the end of the season, we know it really didn't amount to really anything.
Right.
But at the time, it was kind of cool. And again, you still sense that connection there. But also a couple of other things were one, man, stage one of the Razor Crest having a really tough year, a really tough few weeks. It was the
Mhm.
very first one. And I think the other thing was the idea that uh, the New Republic, while with all of their altruism, they still have these shortcomings of whether like what they're actually willing to get involved with, and really just how much they're actually willing to help with anything. I mean, what they did, how they left him was pretty crappy. It was just really, really
Mhm.
crappy. Like, oh, we're gonna save your life because you did a good thing, even though we don't like what you did elsewhere on the prison ship.
Yeah.
But you could probably fix it, and if you don't, well, you die. Cool. So
Yeah.
it's just completely against the grain of what the characters were saying to Din in that moment, and it still rubs me the wrong way when I was rewatching it. But I really like this episode. I mean, the CGI on this one was fantastic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, for sure.
I mean, and feeling like you've just got like, how the hell are you going to get out of this? Your ship is a complete wreck. And it was just like one thing after another. Like as soon as you think, okay, they're going to get out, they're going to get out, and then the giant daddy spider comes down. It's like game over.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. So
Wait, I
yeah,
know.
this one's
Wait, hold
this
on.
one's tough.
I know what the bad is for this one on you.
You
You
do?
didn't get an elaborate repair montage.
No, it's actually so my bad on this one is the frog lady naked in the hot tub. That was not didn't need it. No thanks. Hard pass on that one.
Whatever.
Um,
You replayed that part of the episode
Ugh.
that time.
it's like shivering. Ooh, you don't want to know that. Like, ugh. I didn't. So let me read the while you're trying to get your breath over there. Let me read the synopsis. While flying a frog to her home planet in return for information leading to more Mandalorians, the Razor Crest becomes stranded on an icy planet filled with spiders. Okay, so my good was seeing R5D4 and then the final attack of the spiders when they were kind of creepy crawly attacking and all that. Again, the CGI was really great. I thought the suspense was good. And then being saved by the New Republic, I thought was kind of cool. Although I'm with you on that, it didn't really jive or make a whole lot of sense. I already gave you my bad. I also didn't like Grogu eating the baby eggs. I was like, I mean, it was comedic, and yes, I laugh every single time, but there's just something so wrong about that.
It is a
But
little
it's so
disturbing, but it was
it is
hilarious.
disturbing. But I mean, he did a good job, right? Mando did a good job of trying to stay on top of it. Like no, but put his finger out in front
Yeah,
of him.
that was
Like,
great.
don't do that because he knows what's going to happen. The ugly was Pelimato's perm. I think it's one of the most horrible,
Her acting is also kind of up there for me. I'm sorry.
a little sketchy. I can't get over the perm, and I get it's they're paying tribute to Ripley from Aliens, and I understand the backstory of it. But man, that perm is nasty. And also another problem that I have with this episode, he is going way too fast with that child in that speeder bike at the very beginning, and sure enough, an accident happens, and the child goes flying off the speeder bike and all that. I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, slow down, dude. You're going way too fast. There's not even seatbelts on a speeder bike. That's
Wow.
just not, it's irresponsible.
All right, Dad.
All right.
But it was
beyond that,
he was like a cute little puppy. Like his ears were flapping in the wind. It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I laughed when actually that came on. I was like, I wish that was me.
Lauren says, haha, I forgot about the naked frog lady. No, I did not. That's for sure.
He dreams about the naked frog.
I do not dream about the naked frog.
I don't know. I'm
Although
a little concerned about this now.
I like the character, and I thought it's very sweet when they reunite in the next episode or 2 episodes. Is it next episode?
Yeah, it's next
Yeah.
episode. Yeah, the
When they
heiress.
reunite, I thought it was very, very. I love that moment. It's a very sweet moment. But
I like how she rerouted the droid to be able to communicate, though. I
Yeah.
did like that part of it. I
Right,
thought
right.
that was pretty neat.
There's some
And
stuff
yeah, we
in
did
there.
have a question in there. Yeah, Dave Filoni was one of the pilots. He was the one that couldn't act.
Where was the question? I didn't see that. Was it Ash's question?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And then the other guy has done a number of other things, and we can talk
I always
about all
forget.
that.
I always forget his name.
I do
which I feel
too.
bad too because he's actually a fairly recognizable actor. But
Mhm.
I just remember him later on when he had interviewed Grief Karga, and like Kara calls him Cardoon calls him Blue, and then the officer I think is what Grief calls him. I'm like, I just don't view these guys as police officers, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, they're more like
We'll get there.
they are more like I don't know. I was gonna say more like marshals or something. Rangers. Yeah,
Of the
there
New
you go.
Republic.
Of the New Republic.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoa. Okay. The other thing about this episode, at least for me, and I don't know where I'd classify this. Whether it's filler or not, it doesn't really bother me one way or the other. I can definitely see the argument for it being filler and the argument for it not being filler. But you take this episode out and you have to take out the next episode as well, right? So you lose 2 episodes because really, once he has he's got the armor, and she's like, oh, there's a planet and you got to go there. You lose this episode, and then you lose the one for well, you don't necessarily the one for repairs, but sort of you do, right? You may, because at that point that thing had fallen in the water and it was just put together with wire and shoestrings and all that. But that was the other. What I'm saying is that the episode of the Siege, that was another one where it felt like, okay, did we have to tell this story? Oh yeah, we did, because the ship was really badly damaged.
Yeah.
So they could have just said, oh, he got it repaired. And then we go past it. But really that point of that story, not to jump ahead, was to get some tie into like the experiments and the Snoke and whatever, all the crazy bat theories that we had going on with that one. So
yeah, and I think we have to put a little bit of that in perspective too. So when we were watching these week by week, I could understand why people why you and I think had a bit of that impression. Like it kind of does feel like but we knew it had to lead somewhere, and it did lead and get a payoff in the next episode, which I think is important to have. And again, trying to just jump from place to place, we would be critical of that if they just jump from place to place to place and kind of went that angle too. So I think this was an important episode to do that. I like that we were able to introduce the New Republic again. We like seeing X-Wings. Make no mistake.
I love hearing them. That was one of my positives too. Just that humming. I could go to sleep.
Yeah, that whine. Yeah, that whine that they've got going on is just great. I mean, and just seeing them and the whole interaction with them. The acting for the Mandalorian a little bit here was a little off-putting. The stammering and the nervousness and the uncertainty about how to handle this. Like you would just figure he's been in this situation 100 times before and would know what to what to say and what to do.
Oh, you're talking about when they came up and like were escorting him at one point?
Yeah, they were asking for his transponder code and they wanted him to send them a ping and all that good stuff. It just seemed like he was not handling it as well as I would have expected, or not as in more of a stoic way, or just being able to the old hat type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I get that. I think the way I kind of rationalized it or made an excuse for it was he's got Grogu, he's got a passenger with babies, right? He was probably doing everything he could to keep from using evasive maneuvers. Because I mean, when he finally gives up, he just nosedives that thing, right? And everybody goes flying. I think he was just being hesitant about some of that stuff and hoping he could get by without that, and they weren't going to let him off the hook. So,
right. But this is an episode I actually liked more over time. And again, I think it was partially because it was just a different environment. We had the ice cave. We do have kind of a non-human, threat. I love this artwork right here with the X-Wings chasing the Razor Crest.
Yeah.
So I like this episode. I know it kind of creeps people out, or it's a little bit weird in different ways, but I really do enjoy this episode. I thought it had a lot of suspense to it and really had that feeling of like, how the hell are they going to get out of this type of thing? And it was very much an homage to aliens and things like that, which I thought was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Speaking of creepy, there's Frog Lady.
Yeah.
There's Pelamato. I mean,
yeah.
And Dr. Mandibles was a nice name there.
Yeah. There's Grogu's lunch.
And dinner and breakfast. Yeah. And and then of course we'd be remiss without mentioning the spider, right? The throwback to the Ralph McQuarrie artwork from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
So it was all very good stuff there. But yeah, I didn't mind the episode, but I definitely see the arguments for it being boring or lackluster or even just fluff
Yeah.
or filler. Okay, let's move into chapter 12, the siege. Mando takes a pit
Nope.
stop for repairs.
Nope.
Oh, what?
The heiress.
Is it the heirs? Oh my God, I skipped too far. Okay, chapter 11.
How could you
the
miss
heirs.
Bo-Katan?
I know. Let me. Do I have this right? Yeah, I have the right one up.
Yeah, you got it.
Mando meets up with Bo-Katan in exchange for information on where to find Jedi. He helps her and the Night Owls hijack an Imperial transport ship. It's kind of what happens. And you want to go first, or do you want me to go first on the good?
No,
bad, and the ugly?
go ahead. Yeah, give me your thoughts.
Okay. So the good was definitely Bo-Katan and the Night Owls. I mean, hands down. Just everything about the way they moved. They're, finally seeing her, this real representation of her on screen and not animated for the first time. Having Katie Sackhoff play her was just phenomenal. Cool. I mean, I thought she did an amazing job. And it really, again, when I mentioned earlier about how Mandalorian does a lot for Mandalorians and on screen, this bodes well for me in a lot of ways because, when you see this, you think, okay, when they get to Book of Boba Fett or when they get into season 3 more primarily, when they get to season 3, if the theory is that they're going to go to Mandalore and there is going to be some kind of a liberation and taking back of the planet and we're going to see the war and the tribes and all that stuff, seeing these guys in action, in live action, the way they did, both in season 1, but now in season 2, especially with the Night Owls and how they move tactically and the armor and all that, the special effects and them flying off and all of that worked really well. So, I mean, it just bodes well for a very, very engaging, immersive kind of experience for the Mandalorians, which I think a lot of people really want. I know you and I personally do. So that's all good stuff.
I mean, Risk had a great point out there too. I mean, Bo-Katan really looked like the Clone Wars Bo-Katan, like every aspect. I mean, when you talk about a direct, like, how do you get this right? Look at this episode and go watch the Clone Wars. I mean, it just feels like everything about this episode was spot on, from the character, like how Katie Sack and how the others were portrayed as well, how the Night Owls in general worked, how the Mandalorians handled their business, the confidence, it was fantastic. The way that they moved together as a unit, the awkwardness of Din Djarin, like trying to work with them, and the different ideologies, I thought was really cool.
Yes, that was the best part. Well, one of the best parts, but yeah.
Right. But when you look at how they portrayed Bo-Katan in particular, when you look at Clone Wars to this episode, I don't know that you could have done a better job, especially if you go look at if you compare it with like how they did Ahsoka. I mean, this one is really kind of how you do it. Just the whole look and the way that she stood. It was just the mannerisms were just perfect, and it was really, really great. That was my hands down. My favorite part of this episode was just how they nailed it for Bo-Katan, which is a really important character for us to really, have down. You get the leadership aspect, but you also get that really ruthless side of her as well, where this is important, this is mine, and I'm going to take it, which is kind of how we view Mandalorians in general at times, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. In fact, so I mentioned earlier there were some things that didn't set well with me, and you brought up Ahsoka, and that's where I'm gonna be kind of, I don't want to say negative, but I'm gonna be critical, I think, when we get to that episode, because to your point, the translation for Bo-Katan from animation to live action was like seamless. In fact, I think she does it feels better for whatever reason on screen than even in animation. And I felt kind of the inverse of that with Ahsoka. And that's not I'm not gonna dog on Rosario Dawson. That's not what it's about. But just like you said, it's the mannerisms and it's that translation. And is it that same character that we were expecting? And I know I'll save it when we get to Ahsoka, but
yes. But I think to your point, having into some of the chat, having Katie Sackhoff do it made that transition really seamless. That was a big part of it. She looks the part, she of course sounds the part, and then they had the costume and the build of her and the others was just perfect. And so it was just everything kind of clicked and worked. And some of that was just probably the continuity from what we had seen on screen, even though she clearly looks different than what we had in the Clone Wars, right? She had longer, straight hair, it was kind of straight to her shoulders. So she had a very different look, but you would almost not know it, especially with the helmet on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of cycling through some of the pictures now.
I don't get this one. Art. Yeah. This is like a comedic art with the little squid thing attacking Grogu.
It's fine. This is the harbor. Okay, so let's. My bad. And we talked about this when we were talking about the episodes. As we were last season, and this comes up a little bit later. But one of the bads that I think I've had is Mando and his armor, and the fact that he can take all this punishment because he has the Beskar on, and he's not fully. I mean, he's not completely, covered up in Beskar. It's not like full plate mail, right, where there's no, exposure to any of his skin or anything or clothing or whatever else. He does have parts in there, but yet in this episode, when he kind of takes one for the team and he rushes in and with that grenade and they're shooting him, you just don't expect him to kind of like be no big deal, right? And again, later on when we get to Taithon, I think especially he's sitting there taking a lot of damage. He takes it again at the very end of the last episode of this season, but he just he's never hurt, and we never get to see that in him. And I just wish there would have been something there where he did get shot, right? Where we see that he is vulnerable and he is human, and the armor is amazing and it can protect him, but there's some weaknesses there, and he's got to be careful about that. But in this episode, he just kind of runs full on into a breath of just stormtrooper fire and doesn't have any kind of problems whatsoever outside of kind of the annoyance of it kind of pushing him back and that kind of thing. So again, probably a minor thing. They are the heroes, and we don't necessarily want to see them, suffering all the time, I guess. I think they do need to at some point. All right.
They need to feel real, right?
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
that's where you and I agree on this one. I think it's just a case where, he's got to take a hit. I mean, he can't continue to walk away just completely unscathed and basically be tired, And I think the other thing, so that was one of my kind of bads as well, but it was kind of a bad throughout the season. My other thing was it started to get wear a little thin on me with the whole everybody wants his Beskar armor. And so it became a trend. It started to become a trend here. And it wasn't until another episode or two later where I'm like, okay, we get it. Your Beskar is really, really valuable and people want it and they want to steal it and you're going to have to peel it off your dead body. I get it. But it just seemed like it kept coming up like over and over and over. And then I just don't like to be force fed things like over like all the time. We get it. Tell me what it is. And I get people want to do it, but fishermen trying to steal it from him and whatnot. I mean, I guess everybody is desperate for something like that. But it was now granted, it did give us an opportunity to see, the Mandalorian or the Night Owls in action, which was really, really cool. But
oh yeah, that whole scene where they're swarming at the end there and taking the ship over. I mean, it's just
and the alleyway and the ships taking the ship over. Yeah, it was just. I mean, it's what you would expect from Mandalorians and just total badasses.
Yeah. Okay, for the ugly, I had my the Mon Calamari sweater. I thought that was pretty ugly. I actually, so in true story, I didn't go grab it, and I should have. I actually went out and bought. Did you remember when I bought this sweater? So it went on sale at.
I do.
It went on sale at Amazon. Somebody had found it. Like, here's the actual sweater you can buy that Mon Calamari is wearing. So I went and bought it, and I actually bought it in 2 colors. And then I found out. Hold on, there's more to this story. Not much more, but I found it in 2 colors, and so I couldn't tell when I was looking at the Amazon art, and it was like, I don't know, $20 or something like that, $25 or whatever for the sweater. So I bought 2 of them, both in the colors that I thought was, and so they both came in, and neither one of them is the exact color that he's wearing in the episode. And so I was like, well, this sucks. So
maybe you needed the coveralls to go with it.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Maybe I just needed the head and the fake hands. But so I started doing more research because that's what I do.
Right.
And it turns out those are indeed the sweaters that were ordered. However, the costume designer didn't like the colors and wanted it more of a bluish aqua tone, and so she ended up dyeing that sweater for the episode a different shade of it. So I got to find the dye now so that I can dye my sweater, and then I got to get the head and the hands so I can dress up as that Mon Calamari.
Does he have a name?
I don't know if he has a name, but I don't know. I just liked him. I just thought he was funny. So yeah, there you go. That's that was the ugly. I thought the Imperial tactics were really stupid, but that's par for course for them. Getting sucked out of the cargo hold there, I thought was pretty kind of funny as well. So but yeah, what about you? What did you have for ugly?
The ugly was the Mon Cal repair on the ship. It was pretty rough. It was good. Yeah, that was just more comedy than anything else. But yeah, I really have a whole lot of problems with this. Actually, I don't know that I really have a lot of ugly for really the most of the season. So I'll just kind of preface all of this with this. But yeah. Oh, there you go. You have an adoring fan, Albert. You are adorable.
I am adorable. Right. Thank you, Steph. I appreciate that. Okay. I think, what about, you got anything else on this one?
No, yeah. Good episode overall. I really enjoyed this one.
Okay. We're going to move on.
Wait. Yeah, I do. No, I do actually.
Oh, go ahead.
And it's more of a question for you. How do you feel about the whole, this is the way, that is the way, in the different ideologies that we started to be presented here with a child of the Watch
Yeah.
versus, whatever Bo-Katan and them are.
Yeah, I love it. In fact, I if we go down the path of again the theory of them going back to Mandalore, and when we got into some really crazy stuff with them on the moons, and staging, the takeover or the take back and that sort of thing. I love this because it lays the foundation for them to have conflict later on. Like, I still think this is going. You introduce like the armorer into this, and you've got somebody like the armorer going off against Bo-Katan and talking about ideologies and what's right and what's wrong, and what is the way, what's the true way, and all that. There's some great conflict that I think that's going to happen. I'd love to see those two get into some kind of theological or ideological debate about what is the way and what does it mean to be a Mandalorian, and then having Din Djarin, who's just like a like a Jango Fett, right? Where they didn't come into it, and they were brought in as what is it called? They're not younglings.
Foundlings. Yep.
Foundlings, yeah. But yeah, I mean, just that whole aspect of it, right? So you've got these kind of three different ideologies in terms of what does it mean to be a Mandalorian. I think that's at the core of what the Mandalorian series is. I think really truly believe in my heart that's what it's about, because it seems to be a reoccurring theme with Star Wars. So the short answer, I guess, is I loved it. I love the fact that they put it in there. I like that we have opposing views and opinions about what all that means, and I hope and pray that they're going to explore that a little bit more when we get to season 3 and we start giving all these different groups coming together and who's going to reunite these, right? Where's the common thread for all of them to kind of come together, because they're going to need to in order to take back Mandalore.
Right. And I think that's a great point. I think I thought a lot about what you were saying a year ago, and kind of where you stand with all this, because I know you're a huge supporter of Din Djarin wielding the Darksaber and bringing people together.
Mm.
And the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, the idea of a foundling being the one to lead the Mandalorians and to bridge that gap has become much more appealing to me over time, especially when I thought it more in the context of a foundling, an outsider coming in to unite the clans, and really that perspective of it. I'm sure that's probably what you were saying, but it took a whole year for that to finally sink through my head. So I appreciate you being patient with me as I got there for you.
You're welcome. Well, and we'll get to that too, because it comes up again. I think at the very end when we get to, with the Darksaber and how she, she's like, he's right. I can't take it back. Right? So what does that mean? Right. Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for bringing that question up, because it is an important piece of it. Okay. Let's talk about the siege, which is chapter 12. Mando makes a pit stop for repairs on Navarro before heading to Corvus in search of a Jedi. There, he helps Greef and Kara rid the planet of Imperial remnants while his ship is under repair. And you start. Go ahead and give us the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'll kind of cycle through some of these pictures while you're talking here.
Yeah. So some of the bad, I was really worried this was going to be a filler episode, but and I guess it kind of was. And you landed right on it.
Mm-hmm.
You get the whole introduction of clone. This is really a cloning facility at a lab rather than a military installation or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where things started to take a turn, right? Where we're not sure exactly what the empires were, what the Imperial remnant, if you want to call it that, is really up to, and who is leading this thing. And we know that there is a new era coming. It's the first vocal. I forgot what I don't think she actually has a name, but the really cute girl that reports to Moff Gideon. I have a little crush on her.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah. No, who you're talking.
Between her and Tally, I don't know who's better. Anyway, so it's a well, you got to have one on the good side, one on the bad side, right?
Tally.
Dude,
Tally's dead. She's dead.
Oh, I don't want to believe this. That's your canon, not mine.
Whatever.
We're gonna rewrite Last Jedi just to make sure that Tally survives.
Yeah.
If there's any good reason, that's the only good reason. But yeah, but it introduced like the whole, Dr. Pershing makes a reappearance here. We know that Moff Gideon's alive. But yeah, I thought, and really the effects and the chase scene here was really, really cool. And actually my favorite moment from this entire episode is still the guy, the scout trooper going down the hill on his bike.
Yeah.
And the one that survives actually. And he does that little skid where he's got his foot on the ground, they do at the motocross.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just that scene and the way that it was handled. Of course, he was the first one to go and they finally got chased, but it was just a lot of fun. Now, the end of that chase scene was kind of one of my bad, and only for a bad because it was super cliche and totally expected. The Razor Crest coming out at the last minute, and they're out in the open and they have nowhere else to go. and then he starts chasing him, and the ship is bright as rain and shiny and brand new and everything after about
Right.
12.
In record time. We
Yeah,
talked
like
about that when it came out. It's like,
yeah, 4 or 5 hours later, he's got a brand new ship. So it was, again, you mentioned at the top of the show, a bit of suspension of belief in a lot of the season, and I think this is a great point of that. But and then my final like good thing was the Grogu in the school and using the Force and the interaction with the other kid to get the cookies. It still was cute and had a chuckle out of that one.
there you go. It's up on the screen right now. Good. Okay. So for me, the one thing that the good for me was honestly Cara Dune. Like as much
This was a good episode for her.
I mean, put all the controversy to the side, right? I freaking love the character of Cara Dune. Like everything about her. I love her origin. I love the way Gina Carano plays her. Her acting has gotten better, which is good. Is always a good sign, right? And she's not kind of leveled out. She was starting to get better. And I think it's unfortunate that we're not going to get to see her in this next season. Honestly, I really do, from the bottom of my heart. I don't like that. I get it, and I get why. I don't maybe disagree with it, but whatever. It is what it is, and she's not going to be there in the next season. So that said, I thought this was a really good episode for her. It showcased her talents really well. She had some great moments in there, especially at the beginning. I think I had that picture up with she meets that little ferret looking thing. That was supposed to breathe fire, but they took it out because of special effects. But yeah, again, and I thought it was a great episode for her. The other good that I had was that, like the TIE fighter battle at the very end. I thought that was pretty suspenseful. Yes, it was cliche because he comes in last minute, aka Han Solo. You're all clear, kid, kind of thing. But it was good. I really enjoyed the suspense that brought, and the fact that the turrets were blown up. I mean, they did a good job of kind of slowly building up into like, how the heck are they going to get out of this? And the last thing I was expecting was the Razor Crest to be fully restored. So they got me. They surprised me. So kudos to them for doing that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it was an enjoyable episode. It was really cool. I mean, this is also one of the first episodes, I believe, we had a lot of callbacks. A lot of the trooper dialogue was basically right out of A New Hope.
Yeah.
Several, like more than one. I think it was like 2 or 3 different lines. A lot of the camera angles, though, there was some really good. Actually, I really liked some of the camera angles and the Imperial installation. We did get a bit of a joke about the lack of handrails, which was, one of those kind of breaking the fourth wall type of things, which I just found was great because, I mean, you and I complain about it all the time.
Oh, it's spoiler alert. It's my bad, but keep going.
It's your what?
It's my bad for this episode.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
It's like too on the nose.
No, just the lack of guardrails in Imperial bases in general.
Well,
yeah,
that's the bad of every Imperial installation.
It's like, I guess it's a big OSHA violation.
But I'm with you, Cara Dune, and the character in this episode was kind of her moment to shine, and I like it when people get excited. She's like, woohoo, and
yes,
crushing everything. It was just exciting. It was a lot of fun, and this was a total setup episode for Rangers of the New Republic.
Absolutely.
The end of it was, and so seeing that really, like, actually felt a little bit of a pang on that one, where it's like, man, this was a total setup episode for that series, and that series I don't think had it been announced yet. I can't remember if it had been announced yet. So. Right? Yeah. So it was
because we didn't get that till Disney
Investor Day. That was in November. It was pretty close.
Maybe. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it was. Let me see. Keep going. I have the episode dates here somewhere.
Right. Yeah. So regardless, it was in that same time frame where total setup to what we were going to be getting here, and whenever it was. And now that seems like that's going to have to take a at least a slight shift as far as the characters and what they were going to do and where they were going to go with that one. So that's a bit disappointing.
November 20th was when this episode aired.
Yeah, and I want to say Disney Investor Day was earlier November, if I remember right.
Fair. Yeah.
Anyway, around that time, but yeah, a little disappointing. You kind of feel that like, oh, there was a project there, and now we have no idea what's going on with this project.
Yep. I didn't get to touch on it. You did a good job, but I just want to highlight for the record that yes, the whole cloning facility aspect of all of this was good stuff, and that whole dialogue about, them needing, that message that was apparently, quote, an old message, but then they find out it was only sent 3 days prior to, and how they needed another blood sample and the M count, right? Talking about midichlorians, and all this just reinforces Albert's headcanon that at the end of the day, what the Imperials are doing here is trying to figure out a way to bring back Emperor Palpatine. I don't know if it was this episode or not. I think it was a little bit later. I don't remember. I wrote it down, so we'll probably get to it here in a little bit. But there's a moment here where someone says, we're trying to bring back order to the galaxy, and I'm paraphrasing, right? And if you think about it from the Imperial perspective, that is what order is, right? The order is the reestablishment of the Empire, putting everything back the way it was, getting rid of the vacuum that's been created on all kinds of levels that we've probably beat to death here on the show as well. So again, all that kind of reinforces all that for me. So I'm glad that we actually had this, and it can feel like filler, like I said, because they didn't have to come here. They could have just said, "Oh, he got the ship repaired," and we would have just accepted that, right? But they did, and this is the primary reason I think for this and for the launching of Rangers of the New Republic as well.
Right,
So,
but again, I think this is where if you're going to have an episode that is kind of filler, it's important to have things in there that you can still go back to and say these are important moments to remember, or that these are things we're going to build on later. They put they sprinkle the seeds there of what we're going to see. So there's a reason and a purpose that they're in this place at this time, and it does have value. It's not complete filler where it's an absolute side quest, right? That has no interaction with the main quest stream, right?
right, yeah,
For RPG players like you and me. I mean, that type of thing is important for us to say, okay, what's a good use of our time, within a really condensed series, 8 episodes. We have to start somewhere, we have to get there, and we have a lot of ground to make up through this season here. So, but yeah, when I went back and looked, I was like, man, I may have felt like filler on a couple of these episodes earlier, like when we did this before. But when I look in compared to like Bad Batch, I'm like, well, Bad Batch probably had a lot more filler than this one did, but they had a lot more episodes too.
yeah, no, that's right. And I think we've talked about that too, where there seems to be this ratio, right? You're going to have X amount of core episodes, you're going to have some quote filler episodes, and then you're going to have episodes that are just kind of like in between. But yeah, it's a numbers thing. Okay, and then the ugly. For me on this one, this was Grogu throwing up and the piss poor job that Mando does to clean it up. Like he literally, like, if you ask a kid to go clean something up and you hand them a paper towel, they just kind of just do that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. Like, no, dude, come on. That's not how you clean vomit off a kid, right? You've got to get the wipes. You got to get that
give
off
him a
there.
break. It's the first time he's been around it.
I know. New dad kind of problems, but
But
what about you? What was your ugly?
Well, no, I mean, and actually, I didn't really have an ugly on this episode, but one of my favorite comedic moments was Grogu, like basically the roller coaster ride.
Right? Yeah.
His hands above his head, and
Yeah.
Whee! It still cracks me up.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
Oh, one of my least favorite character in this series continues to be the Mithril, and I just don't. The comedic element just really isn't there for me. I think there were one or two in this one where I kind of got a little bit of a chuckle, but
yeah, he did better in this one, than he did in the very first episode of season 1. But
agreed, absolutely agree. Yeah, it worked a little bit better, but the way that they interacted and treated him, and I'm going to take, I'll take 30 years off of your. I'm like, come on, it's just it didn't hit that right note for me, so it was still a bit forced. But
Yeah.
so if I'm going to complain about something, I'll complain about that, I guess.
that's fine.
Yep.
Horatio Sanz. All right. Let's move now to chapter 13, The Jedi. On a forest planet of Corvus, Mando teams up with one legendary and former Jedi, Ahsoka Tano, to liberate a small village and gather information Tano needs to find Grand Admiral Thrawn.
All right.
And
why don't you rip the Band-Aid off for us?
well, no, I'm not. Again, I don't want to sit here and trash Ahsoka.
Well, I don't think it's true. We don't. Trash.
Again, I'm not
We
gonna.
don't-
I'm not
we
gonna.
don't trash
I'm gonna be.
people.
I'm gonna be critical. I'm gonna be. I'll be sensitive about it too. There were things about her portrayal that didn't connect with me, and I think I was probably more lenient when we first covered this episode because I was just caught up in the moment. It was Ahsoka. I know Rosario Dawson was getting a lot of crap just for being Rosario Dawson. Which I didn't think was fair for the character itself. And so I was trying to separate those, right, and kind of compartmentalize those in some way that as much as I possibly could. But now, going back and watching this, I would say that for me, the look of Ahsoka Tano is sort of there. Like, I mean, you look at the artwork here and that makes sense, right? But I don't like her, the Torgudas, like, they're not called Leku. Do they call them Leku as well? I forget now.
I think they
I
are.
can't remember if they do or
they're
not.
technically but head tails. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Oh.
So
Hopefully that's not offensive. I don't
No,
know.
well, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
Ruda's-
her whole
but yeah, that whole piece of it, right? You look at, and I went back and as part of this, homework, I went back and watched the way she looked in the Clone Wars, especially the last season of that, and the way we see her at the end of Rebels in that final piece where she's standing there with the staff, looking like Gandalf the Grey, and it's not the same, and it is a little offsetting for me. That on top of the way she moved, I think at times was a little odd. The Ahsoka Tano that we got in the Clone Wars, she fought a little bit lower to the ground. Again, I'm being really critical now here about some of these things, but so I don't know if the fighting was just maybe she adopted some new fighting stance or something, right? I could probably write that off as being an excuse for it, but it just didn't translate really well. I didn't have a problem with Rosario Dawson's voice, but hearing that voice, Katie Sackhoff is not really fair because it is her voice, right? But hearing Rosario's voice was lower in pitch than somebody like Ashley Eckstein in terms of the way it sounded. So that was a little bit off for me. I wasn't really crazy about her garb. She almost looks homeless and not really like a former Jedi. I mean, she's got like MC Hammer pants on when she's standing there at the very end and she's fighting. Although I will say I did like the blades, the lightsabers, the sound was there. I mean, it was enough there for me to be like, yeah, this is Ahsoka Tano. This is her on the screen. But I don't know. There was just something that wasn't exact. I was a little underwhelmed, I guess, in rewatching this and really wishing that they had done a better job, I guess, overall with it. And I don't know. I'm not trying to fix anything. I don't want to prescribe anything. Again, this is just me kind of giving you my reaction after watching it the second time. So, and this is coming from somebody who loves Ahsoka Tano. Like, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah. Ahsoka Tano in your family is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And it's so that maybe that's why I'm as critical as I am, right? Because I was expecting more. Maybe my expectations were just too far off for me to really kind of have an objective view on here. But anyways, I don't want to keep dogging on this, but I guess if anything, those were the bad. I kind of just jumped right into it.
Sure.
But what about you? Let's talk about
Ahsoka just a little bit more, kind of from my respects. I think the things I liked about it that they captured with the character really, really well was the speed and the quickness of her, like, going through the Force, which I was really cool because that was always one of Ahsoka, especially when she was younger. When even in Rebels, it was just that really quick movement. Yeah, there you go. Head Montrails. I think there you go. That's the official term there. Thank you. So it's that quickness, right? And that ability to not be necessarily stealth, but just to not be predictable in that way. Now, she did seem very aggressive, and I think Risk may have made a comment in there about this too, that she still felt more angry, and a bit less Jedi-like. And again, she's not a Jedi technically, but she was very aggressive and very quickly, quick to strike and kill these guys. Now, we don't know exactly what else has been going on or how long she's been chasing, or what else might be going on. Clearly, Morgan Espeth is torturing people, to make a point as well.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, the look, it was a bit tough because again, when you compare it to Katie Sackhoff, it's just not fair because I mean they had so many visual, reference points for those two already, and to bring Rosario Dawson, God, I sound like Mike, Rosario Dawson, who I thought she did a really great job. I think she really captured the stoicism of Ahsoka and the complaintiveness and the maturity.
And she's a big fan of Ahsoka Tano.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, just the maturity of the character, I think, was definitely there. I think the one thing that people really have the hardest time with are the Montrails, though, because again, the way that they had to make it heavy so it didn't move around too much. But I think you could see we'll call them wrinkles, right? The creases where it hit, was on her shoulders, and it was inconsistent from frame to frame and from scene to scene. One would be, I think her left side would typically be pretty creased. And then the one on the right would not be. And then the next scene, it would be both would be pretty creased. And again, this is a side effect of having a physical prop, I think, too. And we have to cut them a little bit of slack in that regard. But again, when you have a huge budget, when you have a sizable budget, you expect them to get some things really, really right. And this one, for as many things as they did right, that was one part that I think they fell short of the fans' expectation. And then we kind of get to that point with Luke as well later on. But so I think when you're talking about the criticism there, and the only other part that I thought for Ahsoka specifically was when she was actually fighting and moving around, she was not as quick as we would see, like what we would think. But again, I think that's not necessarily fair because you're talking about an animated character and trying to emulate that in real life.
Right.
And
not to jump ahead, but I had I had the same problem with Luke in his arrival. There were some moments in there where I was like all in, excited, but at the same time, it looks really odd because he's moving way too freaking slow.
Right.
But yeah, and just going back to Ahsoka Tano again, I don't have a problem with the character itself. I'm glad that she's here. It gives me hope of what we're going to see. I hope they improve all this when we get to the Ahsoka Tano series itself. But it just, with a character like this, as important as it was, and the other thing, again, to be critical and to be fair, you had somebody like Dave Filoni directing this episode. He directed the whole thing, and he's not the strongest director. I mean, we saw that in season 1 of the episodes he directed. I think they were probably the weakest episodes, and that's fine. We got to give him time, right? He's making the transition from animation to live action, and we talked about that too in the past on episodes about how that some people are naturally gifted at going from animation to TV or TV to movies. They're very different mediums and how you go about these things. And so for him, this is a learning process, right? He's going to continue to get better. I have no doubt about that. But there were moments in here where I felt like the direction was a little off, especially when it came down to the editing. And so some of going back to what you mentioned with the slowness, and it's not even so much the movements itself, it's the way it was cut.
Yeah.
Right.
You linger too long. If you cut quicker, you can simulate quickness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then I felt like he hung on some of these scenes just a little too long that kind of exposed the slower movements, and some of the slower movements that were probably derived from the fact that she's got, 20 pounds of whatever on her head and trying to wield lightsabers and choreograph all this stuff. And right. All of this
it was in the city, I think, is where you really saw it. Like when the droids were shooting and she had to climb up the house or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that was the scene that stuck in my head where she just seemed sluggish.
Right.
But again, probably got wires attached to you and everything else, and you're trying to do your best you can. You got to have help in the editing room to really sell it.
Yeah. So I guess where I was going with that is there's probably some feedback there for Dave, not feedback, but there's probably some criticism there for Dave Filoni and just the way it was edited. And
you ever respond to your letter that you wrote him?
No,
that was
no. I wrote a stern letter to him. No, I did not.
Right.
Stop it. I wouldn't do that. I would, but I did not do that.
The one thing I think on the positive side they did capture for Ahsoka is when she is battling and when she's fighting Morgan Espa, is that she does the stand in place flip, which I was not expecting them to be able to pull that off. And I thought that was a very Ahsoka move.
100%.
Right there. And they did capture that really, really well. So I think overall, I mean, more positive than negative with Ahsoka. And again, it really got us excited. I mean, because you can't help but get excited for Ahsoka because she's such a cool character. And we know where this is going. She's hunting for Thrawn, right? This is a total setup for the Ahsoka series. We have all these ideas about what this means for Ezra and for everything else. And now with the way that the Thrawn books have finished up, there's even more questions you can start to ask yourself with where all of that is actually going and what we might get with Ahsoka. So again, over time, we revisit this so much later, and we've got other material to try to merge it with. Yeah. And the picture becomes much different about where this is all going, which is really exciting. And this is why it's fun to kind of look back and see where we were and where we're at now with some of this. So what other aspects of this episode, or was that pretty much the...
Oh, no, I've got some good. I mean, I started off on the bad because we talked about it, but the good for me was...
It was a mix of good and bad, I think.
Sure. But I think one of the really good things was we did get Grogu's name officially from this episode. We got some background about him being trained by many masters over the years and that he was taken from the Jedi Temple. He doesn't remember who took him, and then there's also this, that, at some point his memory goes dark, right? And she can't see what's going on. So how did that happen, right? Was he under some kind of duress or stress? Was he imprisoned? And this is, as part of how they imprisoned him, was causing, there's a lot of things that kind of stem from all of that. And where they get explained, I don't know yet, right? I don't know if this is, I know there's people like Rondo out there who don't want Grogu back. There's people that feel like he's a tether and he was just kind of a step along the path of what the Mandalorian's trying to do. But I think he does play into this at some point, and you got to hold Mando at his word when he says, I'll see you again, or I'll be back, or whatever the heck that is, that line at the very end there of that last episode. So I think he will come back. I like the fact that, we got that background for him. I thought it was important. Even if we may never see him again. But then also just the announcing or the mention of Grand Admiral Thrawn, right? We were anticipating that was going to be part of this series or where this was going. And that was a solid confirmation. You look at the Ahsoka series coming up, it looks like that's starting to play out as that's going to be kind of their primary aspect and what they're going for. So there was, again, another episode where I felt like there were some things that were laid down as kind of springboarding into other series and stories and threads that they want to do. And that tells me that they've got a vision, right? Filoni and Favreau have a vision. They know where more or less where the story is going, and they're kind of putting pieces in here so that you can kind of tie it all back together, which is what we would expect from a Dave Filoni verse, right? He's done that in every one of the series that he's ever had a hand in. So this is not uncommon for him. So it is kind of his telltale sign here.
Yeah, definitely the planning and direction, I think, is it's usually never really in question. I think you pointed out, particularly well with Filoni and what he did with Clone Wars and what he did with Rebels and where he took them and where they were supposed to go. And yeah, but I'm with you. I think this was great to get a little bit of backstory on Grogu, and actually, what we see some of this stuff playing out in the next episode with the tragedy too. So Ahsoka starts laying the groundwork for Grogu about where he's at. He's afraid. He's and she's worried about anger and what all that can mean, right? And she's seen it before. We get an Anakin reference,
Mhm.
and again, we know some of the things that she's already experienced with Anakin in Rebels and kind of that experience. So to have that play out in really obvious, I mean, just very overt ways in the next episode really gave a lot more weight to what she was trying to say. Now, again, why? And I think Din Djarin had a great line here of like, "What do you mean you won't train him if he's afraid he needs to learn how to control this stuff so that he can do it?" Whereas she's on the other side of the fence, like, no, if he doesn't get trained, then eventually his abilities will fade. Which I think was one of the first times we had really
Heard that.
heard of abilities fading in the Force. Right
Mhm.
now, we're getting more exposure to that in some other media now, but that was also an interesting concept that if you just don't do anything with it, then you'll just be a regular person, I guess, or a regular being. I just thought that was very interesting. But I like that we get to see some of Grogu's power coming up here, and some of the things that she was worried about are definitely a very real thing.
Yeah, yeah, they did a good job of kind of hinting that there is a dark side to him, and that needs to be squelched or controlled in some way. And maybe we see more of that later on. But
Yeah. Now
um,
here's a great question. So
yeah,
on the do you, so from Ash, the Anakin reference, do you think she knows Anakin has been redeemed at this point?
I think so. And the only reason is because uh, I would assume at this point she has spoken to Luke Skywalker, right? Communed with him in some way, or if she's not,
Yeah.
via proxy, she's spoken to, communed with Yoda, or maybe she saw him. I mean, think about their connection, their bond, how close they were. If he's gone over to the good side and he has the ability, which we know he can manifest his spirit in, because we saw that at the end of Return of the Jedi, who's to say that he hasn't come by and said, "Hey, it's me. Sorry about that,
Yeah.
but I'm all good now," kind of thing,
We good?
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if he can help Ray out, why can't he go pay Ahsoka a visit? I guess that the other question though is, has Ahsoka come across Luke? And
Mm,
there are times where it's like it seems like they've crossed paths, but then Ahsoka, with some of the things that she says in this episode, kind of make you think maybe not. But there's enough that she says, well, maybe they have. I mean, it's very
yeah,
ambiguous, right? And I would like to think that they have crossed paths at some point, and that she is still going down her own path because she's got her own. She's not a Jedi, and she's got her own plan or what she needs to do with Sabine and Ezra and Thrawn and all this other stuff. But it's an interesting concept, and that's a good question. I like the question a lot, actually.
well, yeah. There was another. So they're now in the chat talking about whether you use it or lose it on the Force, and this goes actually back to one of the questions that we had during our Q&A session,
Right.
from the readers, where somebody had asked about Luke Skywalker and why he was a teenager, and at that point he really hadn't demonstrated anything, and then went through training and all that. And I think that's part of it. Again, I think what we said then was that, and we see this in the, you mentioned it, but the High Republic, and there's some other stuff that's going on right now. But the Force is something that people are Force sensitive can tap into, but without training, they don't know how to do that. And so, like anything else, like atrophy could set in, right?
Right.
Atrophy could set in. You start losing your connection with the Force, and without that connection, someone has to help you reconnect, or you've got to be able to figure out a way to do it yourself. And so, there is a chance there that it just goes away. Here's the only and I don't have a really an ugly here. I couldn't find anything that was really funny. I was gonna make fun of what's his face's hairline, but that was not a good joke because I'm losing mine. But the one thing that
Too close to home.
it's just like, whoa, I don't want to throw bricks here at a glass house. um, the one thing that did stand out, I guess it's a bad, maybe it's a negative or whatever, but I don't like that Ahsoka Tano was like not willing to help Grogu. And I get they try to kind of write that off as to why, and that's Filoni. So you're not gonna really go push up. I'm not gonna go into grain and say it didn't make sense.
Right.
But the idea that her solution was to go find a stone, sit the baby on the stone, and see if somebody answers the call. Like, it just seems like, I mean, visually it looks cool, and it certainly sets up, things for the next episode and all that, and kind of a bigger picture, right? But that just seemed kind of like I don't know. I didn't like the fact that was her response. Is like, I don't know, go see what you can find,
Well, but I think again, and that's why it leads to the question of whether or not she actually has come across Luke, or whether she.
No, yes, you're right.
I mean,
right.
and that's kind of where the question. That's why it's like, okay, well, does she? Because in that kind of place, you would think that, okay, maybe she doesn't know about Luke, or it's been a very long time since they've crossed paths, which might be more accurate in that regard. Because Mandy's got another good question. You think they would have felt each other's presence at some point? You would think.
I think so.
But again, Ahsoka has been in hiding. So and we can't really use the Ahsoka book as canon anymore, right?
Yeah.
But we know that she was laying really low in a low profile, and while she's been doing the Fulcrum thing, she wasn't really in Vader's radar either, right? That was really fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, so you would think that she's been lying low enough to try, because again, the state of the Jedi right now, they don't want to be found, or at that time where she left, they don't want to really be found. And now it's kind of this reemergence. Like, how confident are you to reemerge? What have you got to emerge to? And so there's a lot of questions about what this age actually looks like with Luke. And we know so little about what Luke has been doing the last 5 years between Return of the Jedi and this story, that there's fertile ground here for us to learn more. And hopefully the Ahsoka series is going to help fill in some of those blanks.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have an ugly on this one? Because I think we're probably ready to move on here.
Yeah, I think we beat this one to death.
Okay.
And I don't think Ahsoka book is canon, actually. Someone's asking about that.
No. I mean, there's parts of it that technically could still be canon, but because they've already written off pieces of it as not happening, then
when they did the final Clone Wars stuff, it started to tweak some of it a little bit too. So I think technically it's not canon, just like Plagueis isn't.
Yeah, it's like canon adjacent now or something weird.
Yeah,
I don't know, they don't have an official name, but that's kind of how I've been looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay, Chapter 14, The Tragedy. On the Jedi planet of Taithon, Mando and Grogu attempt to call for a Jedi when they're attacked by Boba Fett and Fennec Shan. After learning Fett merely wants his armor back, the three take on a squad of Imperial stormtroopers who act as a distraction while Grogu is Yoda-napped.
That's not what it says.
I think that's the official
that's
synopsis
exactly what
of StarWars.com.
Right.
All right. The good. I mean, my goodness. This episode is like
Richard
the Boba Fett episode, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there? It's the fact that we get to see him again. I mean, everything from the way this thing starts, and you get to see Slave One flying across the screen, and that whole image and the sound of it. Yeah, exactly, man. It was just like, I mean, it's hard not to fanboy girl, whatever, out on that whole scene. And then just seeing Tamura Morrison playing Boba Fett the way he did,
right,
and just the savagery and the way he fought and all of this. And again, I'm going to credit to Robert Rodriguez, and this is what I'm so excited about going into the book of Boba Fett, because he is behind so many of these episodes. And just as an aside, I actually have a buddy of mine that I've known for about almost 16, 17 years. He actually works at Troublemaker Studios, which is Robert Rodriguez's studio.
Oh, nice.
And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, man, what's up? He literally texted back, said, don't even ask, dude. That's all it said. So I respected it, and we joked about it, laughed about it, whatever. But he's you're
saying no to the My Little Pony watch party?
Yeah, no, right. So he's tight-lipped about it, but this whole series has been really tight-lipped. But so going back to take it back to Mando, I enjoyed just the direction of Robert Rodriguez. There's so many. We talked about this too. There's so many shots and angles, and the editing and all of that is right out of what he's always done. And so if you've never seen his work and you enjoyed this episode in terms of how it was cut and produced and released, go back and watch some of those episodes. And there's just all these, like, telltale, what do you call them? Signature shots and movements of the camera and all that. So But yeah, this was definitely the highlight. Was certainly Boba Fett coming back, and
Yeah, and it was
yeah,
cool seeing Fennec Shannon in action too. I mean, having her,
yeah,
having her kind of do her thing, I thought was great, and having her back and explaining how she lived,
hmm
and seeing her little insides of her belly was
yep.
interesting.
She's got a. It's not a six pack. I guess it's more of like a six gear or a six piston. I don't know what you would call that.
I wonder what her gear differential is.
The other ratios.
Yeah,
But yeah. So what about you? Was it? I mean, besides the obvious, Boba
yeah.
Fett.
Well,
I mean, the armor too. Getting to see the armor again.
yeah, and we saw the dark troopers, kind of officially in action, although it was limited and really not doing much. But we
Right.
we saw the dark troopers in action, which was really pretty cool. We did get to see Grogu commune with the Force in a very different way than we've seen, right? This whole basically this is ET phone home type of area, right? This beacon, this nexus point, and yeah, the artwork here is fantastic. Actually, I would have loved to see them realize this artwork
hmm
rather than what they did. That would have been neat.
Yeah.
I think when you look at the bad though, it was well, could we say the sad because we finally said goodbye to the Razor Crest.
Which
Can we-
I
wait,
predicted
can
would
we-
happen.
Right? Yeah, I think we still need to have a moment of silence here, if you can permit us. Thank you.
Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
Right. But yeah, so sad to see the Razor Crest get blown to pieces. But I think the other part was the Din was a dumbass in this episode, trying to get through the force barrier or whatever it was, and keeps getting knocked out and knocked
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
It's like, and then he's like, "All right, well, I'm gonna go protect you." Like clearly, you need protecting. You can't get through this thing. No one's gonna get through this thing. So
Yeah,
it was
so-
it was amusing.
No. Yeah, before we went to season 2, I think we were doing predictions, and we asked, like, one of the predictions was like, who was going to die, and I said the Razor Crest.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's my legacy. I'll never get anything right again, but I did have that one, so I just want to make sure that is on record. As far as the bad goes for me, I didn't really have a lot of bad from this episode. Honestly,
Yeah.
I thought it was good end to end. The only bad I have is a personal problem with me. And
I've got a personal problem with you.
I know a lot of people. Please get in line.
Right.
There's a form. But the personal problem that I have is with Taithon. And this stems from my love of the Old Republic
Mhm.
and specifically SWTOR, where I've been to Taithon. I know it back and forwards. I know where everything is in Taithon. And this does not look like Taithon. And I'm not the idea that it's actually been mentioned and now canon is not lost on me. I love the fact that it's now canon officially.
It's been a few
But,
thousand years though, right?
Yeah, whatever. But
Okay. All right, just want to
but yeah, this doesn't even like the landscape doesn't really even kind of look like Taithon. This looks like California. Which, by the way, did they ever edit out the helicopter in the background on this episode? I forgot to look.
Oh yeah, I forgot to look too.
There's at one point when it released, there was a helicopter you could see kind of in the background. I think they've already
I'm sure they
stubbed it out.
painted
But
it out. Yeah.
anyways, but that a minor, right? Minor hiccup.
There's aspects of this terrain that is similar to Taithon though.
It's got grass. There's
Yeah,
rocks.
and there are hills and mountainous shit type of things.
Yeah,
I
and
mean there were no
clouds
structures or anything though, which I think was disappointing. But
Yeah. I mean, I guess okay. Maybe it's on. This is like
maybe you're seeing the other side.
Taithon,
I mean,
right?
it could be just as dynamic as Tatooine is. You don't know.
True.
Yeah,
But I do
Tatooine's pretty
know.
dynamic depending where you're at. It's not all.
I
sand and
just
sun.
wish. Okay, so for clarification, I just wish we would have gotten like
Yeah.
when she was like, "Oh, put him on a rock." I didn't really think it was going to be a rock, and it really was just a rock.
It's very smooth.
Yeah, but there were no other kind of like
I agree. Yeah.
relics or fallen, Jedi
Should have been
temples and-
remnants of something, right?
Yeah, something, right?
exactly.
Not just this.
No, I'm in 100% agree with you. It was a bit of it was definitely a letdown because you would, I'm going to Taithon. Like there should be something of the legacy of the Jedi at
Mhm.
Taithon, right?
Yeah.
There should be the legacy of something having been there rather than just the peak of a very small hill, and that's about it with a few rocks and a nice smooth stone and some, basically some rune writings.
Yeah, and what's not
That's
clear to me now too with this episode was okay. Now we got Taithon officially announced, but then when you look at the sequel trilogy, they mention Ahch-To as being like the start of where the Jedi began,
The
right?
first temple, yeah.
Yeah, the first temple, and the first temple in Legends was not on Ahch-To because there was no such thing. It was
Right.
here on Taithon. So
Right.
there's and that's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's the whole Korriban Morabon kind of thing where which one was
Well, there's-
real now.
Right. There's still ways they could fuse all of that.
Sure.
But we
They can
won't
fix
we won't get into a pure speculation episode right now. But yeah. But I agree. I wish there was more to it. It was pretty bland.
What about the so the ugly for me was the look on Mando's face when the Razor Crest was destroyed.
He was
You think
crying
about
on
it,
the
just-
inside.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was
well, it's funny because
He was wearing a helmet. Yep.
he just turns and looks, and his helmet is all you see. But that was a
Right.
joke. But
But you could like almost see the tear underneath it.
yeah, you could see it.
Just one.
What about you? Did you have an ugly on this one?
I really didn't. I love this episode. It was just so it was so good. And I like the dialogue on this episode too of with Boba and what it what the armor meant in some of
Yeah,
the generations.
yeah.
And again, we get a lot of armor references throughout the season, but I like it when we get these types of things like the what Bo-Katan would say about the history and the legacy of her armor, and the idea of the foundlings and that Jango was a foundling and those types of things and the chain code and getting a little bit of an idea what the hell a chain code really looks like. And,
Right.
and apparently they've coded Boba Fett's armor, although it seems to matter a jack zero when it comes to like there's no security on the armor or anything like
Yeah,
that.
anybody
but-
can wear it. Yeah.
Right. But it was cool. I mean, and Boba Fett, I have to call BS with Boba Fett though for a moment here. So when he is targeting the two ships, right,
Oh,
with the
yeah, I
missile,
understand.
he is definitely targeting the one on the right. He's just being a smart ass on the one on
Mhm.
the left. So
Yep.
yeah. All right, Boba, I got you.
Sure, Boba.
Yeah, that's your sense of humor. I get it.
Yeah.
Although it was funny, I did laugh.
Was this?
Nope.
I forgot that this was in there too. The very end there, where he's
Oh yeah,
going,
yeah, it is.
touches the dark side, I guess, if you will, right?
yeah. This is and this is the scene. Yeah, so they've got Grogu, and they, what's his name? Moff Gideon goes in there to check on the baby, and Grogu is tossing some stormtroopers around like they are
Yep.
nothing.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah.
I think we learned that he gets exhausted. If not this episode, then the next one. But
But yeah, I know
Um,
we've seen this. Yeah, you get so sleepy. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's we've seen that before, right? When he healed
yes,
the others, he would
Mhm.
pass out.
Pass
So it's
out.
very exhausting for him. He can't channel the force for long periods of time. And he is, man, these guys are like rag dolls. It's great. I love it.
Yep.
But yeah, you definitely all the things that Ahsoka was telling us the episode before all came to fruition right here. And he's angry, he's scared, and he's not gonna have any of it. And then he sees the dark saber and he's like, oh snap.
Yep.
And then,
Okay.
but then we have the cutest baby shackles ever at the very
I
end.
know. Like, what sick person
But they're
made
so-
these shackles
but
for
they're so-
babies?
but he's probably like, they're so cute.
There's probably like some war with the Babu freaks of the universe, and they were made for them, and so they just repurposed them for.
Maybe Boba
Grogu.
Freak was the one who did it.
Yep. Okay. We're gonna move on to
Freak.
chapter 15, the Believer, because we only got 2 more left here.
2 more hours.
Yeah,
episodes.
hour number 3. Let's see. The Believer. Mando enlists the help of a convict in order to infiltrate an Imperial base to learn the location of Moff Gideon's ship where Grogu is being held captive. And I'll let you go first on this one. Go ahead and give me your good, the bad, and the ugly on this one.
I love the Imperial Graveyard. I mean, the whole idea of like the shipyard that's just all this trash and everything.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it, and the way that they portrayed it was really cool. Without a doubt, this episode probably has my favorite scene in the entire season with
Hmm.
Mayfield. And this was
Oh, yeah,
really,
yeah.
this was such a redeeming episode for Mayfield's character, where we thought he was kind of campy in season
Mhm.
1, and it really didn't hit the mark. Oh my goodness. Like
Yep.
it was so good in this episode. You really finally got to feel the emotion of the character, like where he came from and what his experiences were. In that scene of him and I forgot the guy's name. Oh, crumbs. I can't remember the Imperial officer's name that he's sitting across the table from.
Yeah. No, I don't have it written down, but
Yeah, and of course we get a helmet listed and Jarden in here too, but just that scene right there of it was just so powerful and just so much tension in it. And it was without a doubt my favorite scene, I think, in the entire season. And I mean, it was not good, it's like great. And this was just again another enjoyable episode. We got the tag team of Cardoon and Fennec Shan,
Yep.
which was really awesome, and kind of seeing that teamwork. And yeah, I mean, this episode was just I really enjoyed this episode pretty much start to finish.
yeah, you nailed 2 of the things. Like, my first thing is the Mayfield speech. Like, it's one of the more powerful speeches that we've had in Star Wars, period. Because we can all relate to it, right? And it humanizes him in a way that we didn't get from the first season when he appeared there. It certainly leaves us wanting more of him, and I don't know if that's him showing up in the Book of Boba Fett, Maybe Boba enlists him at that point, or Fennec Shan does and says, "Hey, we need more people," and they bring him in that series, or maybe he shows up again in the Mandalorian. But I think they did enough with his character here to set him up to come back, and for us to care about him in a much deeper way than we did coming out of season 1, right? But yeah, overall, that whole scene was just amazing, beginning to end, where he killed him. I also had the girls working together, especially when they were working together as snipers and they were calling each other shots and working all that stuff. The great stuff. I really, again, I was watching that going, crap, we're not going to see this anymore. We won't get to see this combo or this pairing ever again, at least at this point. So unfortunately, but it was still really good. I'm glad we had that moment. And then for me, it's the freaking seismic charge, right? At the very end, and knowing that was coming, like we knew at some point when Boba Fett and we saw Slave One, it was just a matter of time before we got a seismic charge discharge, which was awesome. Did not disappoint. No.
Any bads? Any bads on this one then?
The only bad I had, and again, I'm nitpicking, was the fact, and maybe this was explained, and I don't remember if it was. Even after watching it, and I wrote it down as a bad, and I thought, well, maybe they did explain this, and I just it went completely over my head. But the bad for me was they've got this Rhydonium, which is really sacred, and they've got these pirates that are attacking them and all that stuff, and yet they chose to transport it by ground. Why wouldn't they just airlift this off, right? And if it's that important, you know what I mean? And that was, again, it certainly takes all of the mystique and the excitement out of the episode if they just, go too high where they can't and then drop down onto the base. But all the suspense is gone. But yeah, that was just like why wouldn't I don't get if they ever explained that. Why couldn't they transport it? Maybe there's something like once it leaves certain altitude that it becomes unstable, or I don't know. They can crap up, but
right. I think the only bad I had on this episode was the way that they parted ways. It was just a little bit campy. Like, oh, I guess Mayfield's dead, right? Oh yeah, he died. Whatever. It was cliche, I guess, and it was uninspiring. I mean, it was kind of cool that they kind of did the right thing for a criminal, I guess, but I don't know. It was still kind of campy for me. But again, I hope it comes back up though. I mean, this really, it was so great. I want to see more of this character, which if you would have asked me this after season 1, I think I told you, I was like, nope, no thanks.
Yeah. Right. And this, the way they did that, I agree. Like they just kind of let him go. I mean, they could have just taken him with them and said, okay, we'll drop you off somewhere or whatever, but they didn't do that. What it does do is it does lead for anything as possible. You know what I mean? Like they've left it up to him. I think when we talked about it, it's like, oh, he's got to figure out how to get off planet now because this isn't where he's from.
Right.
He's on this pirate with pirates and Imperial forces and all that. So he's got challenges of his own. Maybe he doesn't, but at either rate, it does leave it open for him to kind of end up anywhere, really, right? They kind of leave that wide open in terms of where he could pop up. So
yeah,
and from that perspective,
Manny of the chat's got it right on, man. Pirates and no Hondo, a travesty.
Yeah.
I cannot agree more. No Hondo, no bueno.
At some point, we will get Hondo in live action. I have no doubt.
All right, season 3, we're gonna get some Hondo.
Sure.
Where are we gonna get Hondo? Oh God, never mind. That's gonna be a new Patreon episode. Where's Hondo?
Yeah, where's Hondo? Right after we do the where's Yoda in the High Republic?
Yeah, where the F is Yoda?
Yep. I think I had that down somewhere.
No, you texted that to me.
Oh, is that?
I don't know that it was so censored though.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, I was reading I think I was reading that last issue of the High Republic, and that I texted you. Where is Yoda at? It's getting out of hand. That dude's nowhere around.
And then they give you, oh gosh, and then you get the video game. You get a clip of Yoda doing nothing in the council.
Oh yeah, in the eclipse. Yep.
Right.
I was like, yeah, there you go.
That's where he's at. He's just in the council chambers, just contemplating life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder what I can do tomorrow. Probably just hang out.
Did you have a bad on this one?
Sorry. I didn't really have it. I mean, the way that they left Mayfeld was just kind of campy. But on that, there were parts that dragged just a teeny bit, but overall, I like this. I liked how they got Mando to take his helmet off. I think that was a good way for them to kind of force that to happen. And again, it's another good. I like that the connection with him and Mayfeld, that Mayfeld is going to respect that. And basically, like, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so you get a bit of that, like, somehow Mandalorian has earned Mayfeld's respect. I don't know if that's really that hard to do, but it's something. And I thought that was really cool that they did have something of a connection there. And again, I think you had pointed this out at various points in season one. Din Djarin seems to bring out the best in people, in the better part of people. And I think that's
Yep.
something we continue to see, even with people who don't necessarily want to do anything more than their agenda. They still, by his example, are doing something, to try to help. Maybe not the greater good, but we're going in this direction to try to accomplish something more or less
Yeah.
positive. Yeah.
Right. He demonstrates very quiet leadership skills, and again, going back to that whole theory about reuniting the clans of Mandalore and bringing in people that are not Mandalorian to help out and assist, and taking back Mandalore itself. I mean, his character is one that they're kind of pitching him as the person that can reunite everybody, because he keeps seeing the good in people, and he's making friends and allies, and everybody likes him. All that. I think all that is good for his character, and I think it's probably playing into a lot of that. Hopefully at some point. So I want to highlight, Tawan said Hondo will show up when Ezra shows up, which I think is awesome. Yeah, that's probably true, because you can't have one without the other. So
Oh
maybe in
man.
Ahsoka is where we see him next. Or
Yeah,
probably see him
Twan.
again.
Yeah, Twan and I have seen Hondo in person.
Oh,
So
that's right. Galaxy's Edge.
yeah, I know
Yeah.
a handful of other folks in the chat probably have too, but
Not me.
Twan's my boy. So
Okay, ugly. I had one ugly, and it was
Okay.
Mayfield's uniform that he steals off the Imperial driver. He said it reeks and the gloves were wet. That's so gross. Like,
That's awesome. But that's total Mayfield, man. I
yeah.
love it. I love
There
it.
was a period in my life where I did a lot of acting and dancing and costume characters and all that. And one of the things that we used to do is wear these costumes, and they were like, this is at a theme park. It was like in Texas, so you imagine how hot it would get. And so we'd have shifts, and so that guy that was always in front of me for whatever reason, when he was coming off shift, and then I had to put on that same costume, I knew exactly what it's talking. It stinks. It's wet. It sticks to you. It's still warm. It's like the most disgusting feeling ever, knowing that you've got somebody else's skin urine all over you, right?
These were the days before Febreze. So
Yeah, before, yeah. I mean, you could spray some Lysol on there or whatever, and that was,
So
that killed the smell, but
just breathing in fumes at that
you
point.
it was just not a good job. So had a lot of fun, but yeah. Anyways, I totally relate with the wet costume and putting that on. It's disgusting.
Right.
All right.
All right.
Let's get to it.
Yeah.
Now, in this one, interesting enough,
The rescue.
StarWars.com does not have concept art for this episode. I don't think I've never seen any of the concept. I think I may have seen one image that they released, and I think it was like Phil, what's his face, had released it or something. The guy, he's one of the curators for all of the art of books. Phil Sosak, I can't remember how to say his last name, but I think I've seen it there. But otherwise, if you go to StarWars.com, there's nothing out there. So the only thing they did have was like this screen cap, which is in low def. Which, come on, Disney, really? They have like these screen images from the episode itself, so we're just gonna kind of step through those. But chapter 16, the rescue, Mando's team along with Bo-Katan and the Night Owls board Gideon's cruiser to rescue Grogu and take back the Darksaber. Just as things are about to take a turn for the worse, everyone is saved by a great warrior. All right, what's the good?
Oh,
And there were a lot of them in this episode for me. So
yeah, there really were. I like how they crashed into the ship, and again, we got more of the the ladies going crazy here, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
We got the fight with the Darksaber against the Beskar spear. Was really cool. But I mean, again, it is difficult to talk about this episode without talking about two really key points. And one is Luke Skywalker, and I think for folks like you and me, with our generation, our age, seeing Luke Skywalker in black with a green lightsaber at perhaps the height of his power, or or at least of this phase in his Jedihood,
Yeah.
was something we really had zero expectation of ever seeing again,
Yeah.
or at least near zero. And so, in order to get this, even with some of the awkwardness that went with it, I think it was really, really. I remember I did not expect to. I think when I was watching, I had my arms raised in the air, and I was so excited, and I did not expect that reaction from me. And to me, that's what Star Wars at its finest really should do for you, right? You should have these really triumphant moments where something happens and you just get excited and you yelp and you jump. And I think we were watching it in a watch party when we were watching it, so it was just really, really cool. And it was and people have recut the whole Luke sequence with the Force theme and everything else, and recommend you go out there and find it. You just find it on YouTube, and it was really cool. And I think the other scene though, you really can't not say is one of the, again, most touching moments in the entire series is the next shot you have here is the parting of Grogu and Din Djarin.
Hmm.
Grogu's hand on his face, the tear, and I mean just the bond that they've had, and Ahsoka had said it best, that you're basically a father figure, and this is something we touched on a lot throughout it. And I know it's a
Yeah.
theme that that really touches your heart in a lot of different ways, and so it's a to finally have that moment where that expression and that bond could actually be, put front and center and show Grogu his face for the first time. We've only seen bits and pieces. I think when they're on the ship, he lifts it a little to take a sip of drink or soup or whatever it was. But this is the first time he's really had a moment to look eye to eye and be able to share, that moment of really just kind of bearing your soul to one another and just having that moment. And I thought that was just really, really powerful. It is a fantastic way to end the season with this type of thing. And
Yeah.
then,
I mean,
yeah,
oh, good.
no, yeah, I mean, aside from that, I mean, then you're like, oh, and then we got the whole like, I can't take the dark saber thing because I didn't earn it type of thing. It's just like, what the hell? Now we're gonna like we did all this stuff, and now we can't even give Bo-Katan the dark saber, and it's like a cliffhanger of sorts. It was just this episode was just really, really, really good for the things that it got right. It got them really, really, really right. So I'll
Yeah.
pause there because I know a lot of those are probably similar for you, but if get your perspective on some of that, anything we may have missed.
No, I don't agree with any of that. In fact, I have all different ones.
Yeah, those are
No,
all
I'm
the
kidding.
ugly, right?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Those are all the good ones. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like it's the 10,000 pound gorilla in the room. I mean, it's Luke Skywalker. There was a part of me that didn't want him there. And I think I mentioned that when we were talking about the shows. Just from a storytelling perspective, I think there were other characters that I'd wanted to see. And only because Luke coming in for me would have been like, yes, cool, satisfying, but you're teasing me, right? I'm not going to get. You're giving me. You're hanging out this piece of lore that I want, but I know realistically he's not going to be a part of this series, or maybe he is. I don't, in my heart, I don't believe that's the case. He's not going to be a part of Din Djarin's war, the Mandalorians. He's doing his own thing somewhere else, right? And so part of me was like, yeah, cool. I really would hope it's Luke, but at the same time, I don't want it to be Luke because I think that's all I'm ever going to get for a while unless he comes up somewhere else. And I think that's probably the case still today, right? I mean, I don't know. He's not on the slate anywhere. Maybe he comes up in Ahsoka, maybe he comes up in a spinoff series, 5-6 years from now. I just don't know. But that was a part of me that was just hesitant about it being Luke. That said, when he came on screen and everything from, as soon as you saw the X-Wing, right, coming across with one X-Wing, and she makes that comment about, great, we're all saved kind of thing. It's like, well, if it is that one person, yeah, you are going to all be saved because there's nobody else that could have come in that moment. There were a few exceptions, right, that we knew that was definitely alive and still part of canon that would be able to kind of come in, swoop in, and save the day. The way it was shot, again, I mentioned earlier, there were moments in there where I thought they did really good with the editing. There were moments in there where I didn't feel like it was as crisp or as quick as it should have been. My understanding, it was Mark Hamill who was in that costume at one point. I think he was actually doing the hand movements when he was turning around and doing the fight scenes. And then they only used the other actor at the very end to kind of give him a close similarity to his face. And then they obviously did what they did with CGI. So maybe that was part of it. I mean, Hamill's kind of older now, and he would know. The moment where he's crushing that dark trooper. Like, I love the fact that he did that, but it looked awkward the way he did it. Again, I'm trying to be objective here because overall, this is a freaking fantastic scene.
I mean, it was a little. Again, it was. I think you're kind of hitting the point. It's these little details, and I think the glove scene with him crushing the dark trooper is a really good example. The fit of his hand in the glove is just off, just a little bit. And we see this a couple of different times too. It's just not like it was in the movie where it was this really nice snug fit, especially around the fingertips. And we've all worn gloves. We know how awkward gloves can look on your hand. Sometimes they fit really, really well. And sometimes they're like, I've got little, squishy fingers on the end of it or something. And it seemed more like the squishy finger end. This is really technical stuff here. I know. Go look it up.
Well, but you got
But,
to.
I mean, but it's little things like that though that add up. I think if it's one here thing, okay, no big deal. But you had that, and you had some of the mannerisms were a little bit off. Him crushing the Dark Trooper in general, while it was super cool, is that really something that we would expect Luke Skywalker at this stage of his life to be doing? And it's not a sentient being, but exerting his force power in that kind of way, is that Jedi like? I don't know. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not, yeah.
For me, it wasn't so much that would he crush it. I think he absolutely would crush it, no pun intended. But it's the way, it's the mannerism. Like that didn't look like a Luke mannerism for me. And
Yeah.
and people got to realize too, like, okay, one, you're listening to the show, you're probably in the fanatical area already, okay? And if you're in that fanatical area, you have seen Luke Skywalker hundreds of times, thousands of times. We've analyzed every frame of everything Luke Skywalker has ever been in. So when we come out and say, hey, the glove didn't look right, it's because we know what that freaking glove should look like, right? We're not the normal people that are watching the series and enjoying the series. So just full disclosure and disclaimer on that one. But yeah, it was really about the kind of mannerisms there when the way he did that. Again, this scene was just like, even as I was watching in my rewatch, it was so freaking emotional because this is Luke Skywalker. He was my hero growing up as a kid. I have the same freaking birthday as Mark Hamill on September 25th. I mean, you cannot disconnect me. I have a kid named Luke, right?
You are never going to let us forget your birthday, are you?
Yeah, it is September 25th. Please send cookies. So yeah, I mean, this is
dear Mark.
Dear Mark. He is my hero. This is my character, and so I say all of this with a lot of love in fact that I was able to see him before I passed. Now I've been able to witness him come back onto the screen and got to see all that. The other negative, right? Again, another stupid, elephant in the room is the CGI at the very end. It was off-putting a little bit. I mean, there were some of the lines were okay, and some of the syncing of the lips were just fine, and some were not. And I think at the time when we talked about this, the biggest question is why did they not use some kind of deepfake technology? And I think a lot of it, and again, pure speculation on my part, but I do feel like if you're Lucasfilm and you're ILM, you consider yourself the cream of the crop, right? If anybody's going to be able to pull this off, it's going to be us. We did it in Rogue One. I don't know about that, but we did it in Rogue One. We've got to, we have the technology. We have the best people in the world. We're going with CGI because this is what's always worked. It's tried and true. And I don't think it really worked. And now you look at it, though. They've now since gone back and hired that deepfake guy, the one that's done all the really good ones. They've hired him over at Lucasfilm for what? I don't know. To what purpose? To what length? I'm not sure. But I think it's at least an acknowledgement of Lucasfilm to say, okay, yeah, it wasn't 100%. It was pretty good, probably more than good, but it wasn't perfect. And I think now if you take the technology of deepfake and you take the technology of the CGI and what they've done and you put those together, that excites me because it bodes well for us for getting a potential Luke Skywalker series, right? We could have an entire Luke Skywalker series where we get to see all the adventures and we get to see the great warrior, the great hero, the legendary hero that he became, that he references in The Last Jedi. And in a way that we've never gotten to see. So I think that was critical. And before I go any further, I guess the other positive stuff that I felt like the really good stuff was, like you said, the Night Owls, seeing them work together as all those women kicking ass as they were going through the ship and working really well together was just really good stuff. Mando versus Gideon, the Darksabers in action, and then this piece here at the very end, this whole fatherhood thing, which I know I haven't even brought up, and it is like I'm glad you mentioned it. It is the one thing, the one thread throughout this entire series, season 1 and season 2, that has always really resonated with me is that this is a story about parents and children, and specifically in this one, it's father and son. And I thought this was a very poignant moment. Him saying, "I'll see you again. I promise." I'm taking him at his word. We will have Grogu back at some point in this series, unless Mando goes off to another series, which I don't think is going to happen. So I think we're going to get all that. And the fact that we got to see his face and we got to see Din Djarin take the helmet off in front of other people, right? This is showing his growth. This is showing the influence of the Night Owls and him starting to go, okay, I'm not going to just be set in my ways of the old ways, right? Of this is the way, and acknowledging that, okay, maybe there is a happy medium here, and that maybe I have been kind of holding on to these really strong principles and ideals of the watch. And I'm open to the other stuff. Right. So I think that, again, this, for his character, this was a really good moment here for growth. So the bad in this episode, really, outside of the technical stuff with CGI and the editing with the fighting, all that aside, the bad was, for me, was the way it ended. Like, I hate the fact that it just ends. I mean, it was very emotional, but there was nothing at the very end. And I know why they did it. I get it. It really just left us hanging and wondering what the heck, and we cannot wait to see how season 3 picks up. But I
Right.
just wanted some kind of a closure there at the very end of, oh, here's our next steps and all of that, or whatever. But it just kind of drops, right? That door closes and it goes to credits. So
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
sorry. What else you got? You got anything on the bad there?
No, I think you hit it pretty much all on the nose. It was, and again, I don't think it was bad. It was just it didn't quite hit the mark in some areas. Not, no pun intended. But yeah, I like this
This was
episode a
probably
lot.
my favorite episode of the series, by the way, too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I mean, just because of Luke Skywalker, the presence itself.
Yeah, and again, we were, if you remember back to a lot of our conversations, when you bring in characters like Boba Fett or Luke Skywalker, do they overshadow everything else that's
Hmm.
going on? And I think to an extent, yeah, it did. But I think that the way that they used Boba and the way that they used Luke is that they still, you still had really core elements of the story with our Mandalorian and with Grogu and with the other characters, to where it didn't take all of the spotlight away. It was kind of that shiny object you get for an episode or two,
Yeah.
but you're still on the path with the character that has been there since day one, right? Since episode one, chapter one, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that they really have balanced that pretty well with these really two big cameos in one season in particular. So I
Hmm.
really, it's a very difficult thing to pull that off. And the way that they did it, I think it really did play well. And then again, we get the little post credit scene that totally set us up for Book of Boba Fett and got us super excited that that's the next thing coming, right? And so that was
Yeah.
fantastic. That was another great moment as well. Not really part of the core episode, but
Right. No. Yeah.
definitely a teaser for what's to come. And again, it was, and you get this kind of, oh, Boba Fett's kind of a good guy, and then like, nope, he's still going to go do Boba
Questionable
Fett things,
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
underworld type stuff, right? He's just going to be true to character, and so I really like that they were able to pull that off, and we saw that throughout the season. While we kind of bounce around a little bit, it still is always about our core set of characters, and I mean I didn't mean to overlook Bo-Katan or Ahsoka either. But man, there were a lot of cameos this season, actually. And
Yep.
so and the fact that none of them really overshadowed what was going on is pretty impressive. It's actually really impressive.
Chris said, can't remember. Does Din try to give the dark saber to Bo? Yes, he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, he's like, "Here, take it. I don't want it."
He's like, I don't want this. And he even said it before, like even before when they were going into this episode or going into this mission, he's like, I don't really care. I don't want any. He told Gideon that I'm not interested in any of this other stuff that's going on. All I want is the kid. And I'm again paraphrasing. But he
Right.
tried to hand it over, and that's when Bo was like refuses and says, "No, he's right. He being Gideon is right. I can't just take the light. I can't take the dark saber. I actually have to win it in combat." And so we can maybe just quickly kind of talk about that, because I think that becomes a part of what it is. It's going to be a big piece of what we go into with season 3.
Yeah.
I've been saying he needs to take the dark saber. He's going to unite the clans and all that stuff. I don't think he's willingly going to do that with it now. I think that's still season 4, maybe if they go that far. Maybe at the very end of this season 3. I don't know, but I think in some way there's got to be a way for her technically to get the dark saber back. Um, Maybe it's just an honest fight or whatever. But in my head canon is, yes, she does get it back. She does make an attempt to bring and unite the clans and fails. Whether she dies in that process, or I mean, I'm not going to say she's not capable of doing it, but I think there's just something that she's not able to do. And either she fails and hands it over to him, or she ends up dying, and he ends up being the next person that picks up that dark saber and then realizes, okay, I now have the mantle, and I've got to figure out how to pull everybody together because she wasn't able to, or whatever. That's how I'm seeing this kind of all play out. But I think it's going to play out in season 3 at some point, especially if they are going to go to Mandalore. I mean, she even says, "Hey, once all this is over, come look us up." Right? She says that again, paraphrasing. But I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to pick up in season 3 where he's now got in contact with her, and he's going to help out with the other Night Owls and what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this definitely picks up, along this line, and we're definitely going to Mandalore, and we're going to see what exactly the remnants of Mandalore are and what the actual situation is there. Because again, it's been portrayed as this wasteland effectively, and Bo-Katan tells us specifically, don't believe everything you see or everything you hear.
Hmm.
And again, they know they're gearing up for a war. I think I still don't see Din Djarin as the leader, and I still have a hard time doing that, because while he's able to pull these smaller groups of people together, he hasn't been like super inspiring. He's still a loner of sorts. Bo-Katan is actually leading people. And
Yeah.
I think about and part of this is I've got to get out of like the historical aspect of these characters because this is what bit us with Luke Skywalker and a lot of other things. And Bo-Katan has such a rich legacy with the family ties and everything else that and we had in previous series that for it not to be Bo-Katan seems like really, really wrong in a lot of ways.
No, I agree.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's going to have to be her at first.
Yeah, but again, I just
No, well, I know you're saying
if
it needs to
didn't
be her, and it's going to be her.
and it will, and that's it. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's
no, I
kind
get
of
it. Yeah, no, I
now
get what you're saying.
now right now, does Din play a major role in that and then do something, you know, help that along or whatever it is? I think absolutely. I think he's a big part of that. But he's not a ruler. He and again, the way that she put some of that, like, I will rule Mandalore, like it was a bit weird in that respect, but at the same time, Mandalorians are odd about that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, Mandy Homegirl deserves to rule already. I really can't agree too much, or I can't not agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I have to see her back in at the head of Mandalore. Like it's a foregone conclusion in my head, right? Especially coming off the Clone Wars and Rebels, it has to
Well,
happen.
yeah, I mean, and her sister. I mean, and again,
Yeah,
the legacy of
Satine. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, all of the things that brings back, especially for people who have followed all of these series, man, it would just be really powerful to see that happen. It would be really, really difficult for her to fall short of that or to achieve it only to die like her sister
Hmm.
or something like that. I think that would be really tough to see. And I think the cool thing, and this is where having a guy like Dave Filoni who created all of these characters is how much he loves them
yeah,
and in all these different ways. And I think that's the one cool thing about them is that he wants to take care of them and he wants to see them fulfill their parts of the story in the way that they're supposed to. And so we don't always get a lot of surprises as a result of that, I don't think. But sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'm hoping that we get to see Bo-Katan actually fulfill her destiny, if you will, of sorts. Yeah,
yeah. Said in the Emperor's voice.
do it.
Do it. Okay. The ugly. We've got like 9 minutes here because we got to get the hell out
Did
of
we
here.
already talk about the ugly?
No, we haven't even talked about the ugly.
Oh,
What's
we
your
haven't?
ugly? No,
I don't.
what's yours?
I don't really have one. I'm not gonna rail on the CGI stuff.
Oh no, that
Yeah.
was my bad, but that's
I
not
know,
the
I know,
ugly.
but I mean that's the easy for a lot of people's ugly, and I'm just
All
not
right,
gonna go
you want me
there.
to give you my ugly?
Yeah, what smart aleck ugly do you have?
It's it's Cara Dune's line when she says, "Those dark troopers, they're going to be a real skank in the scud pie." Like, what in the hell are you talking about? What is a skank? What is a scud pie? And why did the
Well,
writers decide to land on skank and scud pie? Because it just sounds nasty and gross, and I don't know what that is. I
I
just
don't
want to
know.
know, like,
They're super shiny and really
I haven't
cool.
had a
Like,
chance. Somebody please go out to Wikipedia and see if they've got an entry for skank and scud pie, because if there's not, I have access. I'm going to go in and put entries into Wikipedia for
was
both
it
of those. So
was it actually in the closed caption?
yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
She says those dark troopers, they're going to be a real skank in the scud pie, and like everybody just kind of looks at her like, okay, that's weird, but they just move on when they're talking about the plan. So
oh man, we didn't even talk about all the Dank Ferrick stuff.
no, yeah, that was throughout the whole season.
Yeah,
Dang Ferrick. Yeah, I know there's
in the one, yeah, when he learned Grogu's name, he's in the cockpit, and he just gets all excited, and that's still just
right when he says he gets his attention by saying Grogu.
yeah. I just I was just shaking my head. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
god,
yeah.
it is too much sometimes.
All right, well, that was my ugly. It just sounds gross.
Yeah,
Nobody likes a skank in the scud pie, okay?
that's right. Don't be that thing.
Mandy says
Can we
it's
even say that?
hilarious.
Can we even say that on TV?
I don't know.
No go talls.
No
Yeah.
go talls.
This is the Bad Batch.
Yeah, this isn't the.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Look at Tuan.
Tuan's
Scud
always
pie
been-
was a type of pie. In 9 ABY, the owner of Hangar 35 in Mos Eisley on the Outer Rim planet Tatooine. So
There are a lot of references in that one almost sentence.
yeah. Well,
that
this
I
tells
have-
me that he went out to Wikipedia like I asked. So thank you, Tuan. You're a good man.
Yeah.
And looked it up, and it looks like there is an entry for a scud pie.
He is a scholar and a gentleman, if you didn't know.
Yeah, in the other order, in the other reverse order. But a skank, though.
Oh,
Yeah, I know what a skank is, but
We have another definition here.
Oh, here
An
we go.
expression referring to a complication or unforeseen difficulty. I mean, that seems on the nose. Yeah, that seems about
Sure.
right.
Yeah. I just,
If
what
you
is
want to
this?
be, if you want to be less fun about it,
Yeah.
I mean, this
That's not where
overly
my mind went.
right,
Sorry.
this overly complicated one that Tuan gave us is seemingly very appropriate for Star Wars fans who we would tear this thing apart in about 17 different directions. So if
Yep.
you go out there tomorrow on the 24th on Christmas Eve, you will see a gross elaboration from one Albert Padilla.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to embellish this whole article.
That's right.
At this point. So
It's going to have a whole history of where it came from, who first said it, and why it destroyed Taithon, and why we see it like it is.
yeah. Oh, I didn't see your link, Ash. I don't know when you sent that. I don't see it in the chat here.
Yeah, I don't know if you can link links in the chat.
Yeah, I don't think it works.
Yeah, I think they strike
Otherwise,
those.
people click on them and it hyperlinks and
it'd be
takes
bad.
people out of the show and all that.
Bad
It's all
news.
blocked.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get out of that because I think we're done with that. We got anything else before we get out of here?
No, I think that's about it. Are we ready to wrap up? Let's start.
Yeah, we're done.
So what are we doing for Patreon show?
this.
Yeah, what are we doing for Patreon?
Oh, so we'll come back and do Patreon. We're going to talk about, we'll do the final hype for Book of Boba Fett. For anybody that wants to stay up at this point, since we had a 2-hour show that I thought was only going to be 1 hour.
11 p.m. Central. We got another. Man, we got all this left on us.
But yeah, we're going to get into some speculation around what little we have from the Book of Boba Fett and talk about, I don't know, whatever. We've got some show and tell stuff. I've got some really, I think, cool stuff here. Most of what Jonesy already has, but we'll do that as well. So please join us for that. And we'll, again, throw the link in Discord. If you don't have that, I don't know how do we get that to them?
We basically in Discord, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go set up the show, and then I will post a link out there, and it will populate in YouTube. So if you have subscribed and hit the little bell on YouTube, you will get a notification that you can join the live stream there at, it's 11 o'clock. We'll call it like 11:15, something like that.
Yeah, 11:15 sounds good.
Yeah. So we'll have a short little break here. Hey, huge thanks to all the people who showed up in the live chat. Once again, we do post this stuff out. We try to give you as much notice as we can. We had a really good crew and lots of conversations today. So thank you so much. We had Stephanie, Risk, Lauren, Ash, Chef Chris. We had a couple of new people. Mike Rondo, thanks for joining the show, Mike. Glad you could be with us for a change. Of course, Tuan. We had Jesse. We had, there was another name in here I hadn't seen before.
Michael Cervantes.
Yes, there you go. Michael. I thought we had a couple others, but Katya. Yeah. Katya was able to join us. Thanks for staying up. So yeah.
She's out in Brazil.
Brazil. Yes.
Yeah, Mandy. Did you mention Mandy?
Mandy. Oh yeah, Mandy. Yeah. She joined a little bit later on. So again, if I missed someone, I do apologize. Again, we had a nice lively chat. So thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, happy holidays if you celebrate Christmas or whatever it might be. We hope you have a safe and happy holiday, and we will
Happy Life Day.
Happy Life Day.
I'm kidding.
No, you got to say it in Wookiee speak, in Kashyyykian.
No. Jonathan, look at this. Comes in at the very end. Yo.
Yeah, John McMahon.
1 minute left. All right. There you go. You got your name drop, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
All right.
Okay. That's going to do it. We've got other shows we're still going to do, and just follow us on all the social media stuff. We had to skip a couple shows, so I'm not sure what we're going to do next. We've got the Book of Boba Fett. We'll hit that. We are very likely going to do either a bonus show for the High Republic, or we'll make it part of the Patreon. But we definitely need to be talking about the High Republic because January 4th begins the fall, the Fallen Star.
Yeah.
The fall. Yeah, literally the fall. The Fallen Star comes out on January 4th, and we need to get everybody kind of caught up and kind of give you our thoughts on where all that's at. So we'll do that show as well. So,
right. So again, yeah, most of the social media places are the Cantina Cast or Cantina Cast. So irglamedia.com/Discord. If you want to join us in Discord, again, great conversation over there. If you're a Patreon member, you do get a unique channel and you get stuff in advance. So hope you check it out. Patreon.com/theCantinacast.
And with that, we'll see you guys on the next show.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.